Have you ever watched something that completely rewired your brain chemistry?
A procedural network drama might not be your usual pick, but it's ours.
This is The Buddie System, a 911 deep dive podcast hosted by three friends who have DM'd each other enough character dissertations to earn a PhD in media literacy.
I'm Han, coming to you straight from the characters' heads.
I'm Sil, bringing you to the observation deck.
And I'm Rachel, connecting the dots with my red string.
With our powers combined,
No stone is left unturned.
And no buddy is left behind.
welcome to the Buddie System podcast. We're your hosts, Han.
Sil,
And Rachel.
we're three friends here to uncover the surprising depths of the procedural show that masterfully balances laughable unseriousness with charming characters and heartwarming stories.
We hope you join us as we embark on a journey of witty, insightful conversations, analyzing the characters and relationships on 911 through an elevated critical lens.
Today, we'll be diving into Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot.
The episode was written by Ryan Murphy, Brad Falchuk, and Tim Minear. It was directed by Bradley Buecher, and it originally aired Wednesday, January 3rd, 2018.
In this episode, we meet Abby, a 911 operator, Athena, the LAPD sergeant, and the Station 118 firefighters, Bobby, Buck, Chimney, and Hen. Experiencing a day in the life of a first responder, we follow them through 5 calls from a drowning teenager and a newborn stuck in a waste pipe to a 9-year-old home alone during a home invasion. But as we're introduced to our main cast of first responders, we learn that they may not always be as calm and collected in their personal lives as they are on the job.
So, guys, this is the pilot episode and our first episode of our rewatch. I guess you could say we're kind of taking off, if it were, for a really bad title joke. But thank you. So, what did you guys think going all the way back to the beginning? And I know we've watched through the series, so we're all caught up. But watching from the very beginning, the first episode, and kind of going with the extra knowledge that we know from the later seasons, what was it like rewatching from the beginning?
Well, it was kind of weird for me because I did it wrong. I started in season 2 and then watched up through, I don't know. I think I watched it when we were like midway season 6. And then I was like starting to like sneak in season 1 episodes because
Oh man.
I was I was like, I need more drugs and directly into my veins while I was waiting for Sil to watch more. So like I already had like a different perspective than someone who is meeting the characters for the first time. But it is still weird to rewatch it because I'm like, who are these people? They're so far removed in a lot of ways.
Right. They're from what they are now. Buck went through some serious character development. Actually, everyone went through some serious character development.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like daunting to go back and be like, you will be my child, just not right now.
I don't know what you mean.
All of them were babies.
Evan Buckley has never done a single thing wrong in his life ever.
They all seemed like so young and unformed as characters, which I mean, like, is kind of to be expected with a pilot episode. That's what, the networks are, or the showrunners and writers are pitching to get the networks to buy in.
Yeah.
So it's like, it doesn't always have anything like more to it than that, but it gives you just enough to want more. So let's just dive right in and start talking about these characters that we're meeting for the very first time.
Yeah. Do you want to start with Abby since she's the first person that we see?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's important because she is the first kind of like touchstone for us as the viewers into this episode.
She's the first responder.
Which sometimes gets overlooked as someone working in dispatch because they're not there on the scene.
Yeah.
But as we see in this episode, like the dispatch and 911 operators are absolutely like integral to the entire emergency.
Yeah, because I mean, how else are people getting there? How else would they know what's going on?
Yeah.
So yeah, we hear her talking about how, like, what is your emergency? That's how it starts off, which is cute. And then we see her in her home with her mother who's living with her, who has advanced Alzheimer's disease. So it's a very light tone to start the episode off with.
Oh yeah. Gut punches you right out of the gate.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And like she starts off the episode too, like differentiating like two different types of emergencies. So her first kind of emergency is what she handles like on her day to day. And that's basically her mom is a huge part of it, she says. And, she's kind of I feel like she's kind of like I'm not going to say I don't want to say a workaholic, but she's kind of lost I guess her own personal life, right? Because she works
Mm-hmm.
as a 911 dispatcher and then she goes home and takes care of her mom.
Yeah, it's like she doesn't get a break. She goes from her day-to-day kind of emergency, which may not be as high stakes, high strong, but she's in this caregiver role at home. And then she goes to work where she's providing care and helping other people through their emergencies, but on a much like higher tension sort of environment.
Yeah, and I think the line where she says, like, what does it say about me that I almost prefer this type of emergency, like talking about work, kind of makes a lot of sense, especially if you or anyone has lived with you who is declining in some way. It's, you know, obviously not as urgent as the emergencies at her job, but it is a different kind of emotionally tolling, especially because it's someone that you love. And I can't imagine like the emotional toll it takes to like every day just like have the patience
Mhm.
with yourself and your loved one who has dementia, let alone like advanced dementia, like forgetting how to like open doors level dementia, like that's hard.
I think she says at some point towards the end of the episode, but it's going to play like a big part in the entirety of it. She says it takes a certain kind of person to swim in the pain of the world and not get wet, meaning, these people who are running towards the danger instead
Mhm.
of away from it, which, most people are either conditioned or trained or to do, because that is you're not supposed to go towards it. But
Yeah.
but the first responders are the people who run directly into the fire, if you will. And it I kind of forget where I was going with that. But
I also just want to bring up like how stressful it is to like like when you're insanely stressed out and like things seem so insane like they couldn't get more insane, and then it's like one minor inconvenience that can just like push you over the edge.
Mhm.
I feel like that to her is the aide who comes to help her mother who is like always late, but she can't go anywhere
Oh, absolutely.
until that aide is there. So yeah, she's really going through it.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully, hopefully we'll see that she gets better help on that regard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's almost I think to pick up my train of thought from a minute ago, it's almost like her going to work is her escape
Mm-hmm.
from having to
Yeah.
be at home, which is such kind of a flip-flop of what most people would think. It's like most people would think you need to like relax, you need to, just like decompress and everything, but to her that kind of is how she does it. Um, and it's interesting too, I noticed in the opening scene, so like after she goes through her voiceover and we see her for the first time, we don't learn her name until we see a shot of um, her name and her phone number on kind of the side table next to her mom's bed.
Oh,
Because her mom is in
I didn't
her
even notice that.
living room, I think is the setup, because she doesn't have like a big enough apartment to really um like we said, her mom is kind of taking over her life
Yeah.
in that kind of sense. So the camera pans to, Abby saying, you can call me if you need anything, and it says, just like a little label like Abby and her phone number, which I think
Yeah.
is so interesting and like a perfect introduction to the character, because that is also how she communicates with so many people, being a dispatch operator. So it's kind of connecting her personal life with her professional life in a way that there's not a lot of barrier there. Like
Hmm.
they kind of cross over into each other. Like the Venn diagram is a circle, essentially.
Yeah. And I also was thinking about how, it's a little crazy to think about as someone who is in neither of those positions as, in a workplace or, family wise as a caretaker. But it does make sense if you think about it because she has no control with the dementia
Mhm.
thing. Like, there's nothing that she can really do to help, and it's got to be like maddening. But at work, she has a certain kind of control because she's, in charge of getting these people help. So, and there's, always something she can do, whether it works out or doesn't, or whether she ever finds out. It feels like she can have that kind of autonomy in a way
Mhm.
that she doesn't really have like over her life at home. So I kind of get it.
But that's really interesting though, because like that's such a tiny sliver of control. Because she goes on to talk about how, most of the time when help shows up on a call, they just hang up.
Yeah.
Um, so
But she knows she got the help there,
mhm,
and she's trusting in her headcanon that things worked out probably.
right.
But it is small, but like compared to home where she has none or
Mhm.
next to none, like it's, something.
But also we see this like lack of control in her dispatch environment. So like sometimes she does have control. She can tell the firefighters or the police or whoever's responding where to go, how to get there, all of that stuff. But as we see at the end of the episode with the last call with the home invasion, she's she's still on the phone between the caller, the little girl, and Athena, as well as Buck. So she's connected that way, but she still doesn't have any control, and like she keeps
Yeah.
asking like what's happening, because she's not there. And then it's
Mhm.
kind of like it it's this transition from what she can do to there's no longer really much that she can do in that situation.
Yeah.
Like there's a handoff
Mhm.
there.
I do like how it kind of addresses that, the fact that she's not there. So like Buck or she's asking, Buck, what's going on? Or, basically what is the result, what's happening? And, Buck congratulates her in a way or praises her in a way. He says that she should be here. She's a real hero. And it ties into how, one of the first things that she says is, she's the first responder.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it kind of ties. There's a little bow there.
Yeah. And she did do like
A
a
lot.
lot more
Hmm.
Oh,
than,
yeah.
she would do on a normal call for that specific one. So, yeah, I'm glad that he gave her flowers, like especially when she doesn't get them and she
Mhm.
doesn't even get like a thank you, like the first responders on site, like get thanked and hugged or whatever, because you're saving their life or a loved one's life, in those cases where they do. But she doesn't get anything. She gets hung up on most
Yeah.
of the time.
Yeah. Or she gets like ridiculous calls, like the
Oh my
woman
God.
with the chicken nugget.
The chicken nuggets. Her response was so funny to me.
That was an emergency.
Yeah.
Oh, they're like, and it's funny because like I have like a small like what if theory that I know Ham knows about. like basically, who trained her? I want to know. I wonder if
Oh my
it's
God, yeah.
Oh,
I wonder if it's blank
Just
character from
yeah.
a future episode, from some
Mhm.
episode. So I don't know.
Possibly next season.
Oh.
Little theory. Well, it's because like when you go into like the next season, there's obviously changes. I don't know if you want to cut that out.
No, it can stay in. That wasn't a
Okay.
spoiler.
It was alluding to things.
But yeah, I don't know. If someone told me to like eat my nuggets, get some perspective, and get the hell off their line, I'd probably look at myself a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
You get yelled at by like a professional like 911 operator, like not like a polite like this is for emergencies only. Like bye. Was like, no, you need to like get your shit together because
Yeah.
this is ridiculous.
Kind of addressing down.
In what world are your nuggets an emergency? Please, like, touch some grass, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Abby sets us off, but Bobby is the next person I think we see.
Yeah, he's the next person we meet.
Yeah, so Bobby Nash, he is the captain of Fire Station 118.
Mhm.
And we see him, all of the 118 for the first time when they, come through the doors for the first call that Abby answers in this episode to help a drowning boy. And he leans down and there's like this halo around him. He's very heroic and he's very calm and gentle and commanding, his people, and then like pulls the mom to the side and is like, it's gonna be okay, and is getting her to answer the questions. So that's a nice little introduction to him. And then we flash forward to him at a church.
Well, there's a scene in between there.
Yes. There was there was a scene in between.
The jumper.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, with both the introduction to Bobby and the 118, I mean, he, like you said, he really does take charge, and you kind of know like who's the captain immediately, especially because everybody goes right into action according to his commands, and he like you said, the way he kind of like works with the way he's able to balance, telling his team what they need to do or what they need to get started with, while also, consoling the mom, and just being able to balance that caregiver versus authority. And we also see that, just to touch briefly on the jumper, where he is the one to talk to the person on the literal ledge, and he says like, I've been where you are, I know how you feel, there's hope, I can help you, and he does say like please, and it seems so genuine, and it's really interesting how that leads into where we see him next, which is in the church.
I also feel like he's kind of like the embodiment of, I guess, what you would call, just on your general like resume, leadership skills. That's who I want to like think about when it comes to leadership skills.
Well, I did want to say on the jumper note that I think, I mean, I get all of my knowledge about this stuff from like other dramatized television shows, so take this with a grain of salt. But I'm pretty sure that like you're not supposed to say things like, I know how you feel, to people who are suicidal, unless you actually do. Like, I'm pretty sure that's part of your training. But again, I could be wrong, so please don't come at me. But so it immediately makes you go, oh, okay. And so you're getting some heavy information about this character like right off the bat.
Actually, I think you're right, because I think we see just like later in, it's either season 5 or season 6, a character who was working as a dispatch operator. They do kind of the same thing, and then they're kind of reprimanded, not exactly reprimanded for it, but it is like
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it is
Mhm.
noted like that's like rule number 1 you're not
Mhm.
supposed to do.
Mhm.
So, interesting callback that you caught that because
Yeah.
that is very interesting, and it does tell a lot about Bobby, or right off the bat.
Yeah. So going back to the church because that's where we cut off to right after
Yeah.
the jumper, you do see like a comparison of how he handles basically the people he saved versus the person that he couldn't save because he was able to save the drowning
Mm,
boy but he lost the jumper. So we have a book, we're introduced to this little book with all these names and one of them is the name of the boy that drowned. He was resuscitated. He saved that person.
Yep. Let's talk about the confession.
yes. I have so many thoughts about this.
I have so many thoughts before he even starts confessing,
Uh-huh.
and there's a lot of thoughts about those. But it's so funny because I was not raised Catholic. I was
Mhm.
raised, in religion, but not that. So, but like every other depiction that I've seen of confession, like you're not like looking directly. Like, isn't there like a screen or something? Like, I didn't think you were just like staring into the soul of the priest as you confessed your sins. You know what I mean? Like, I knew there was a thing that you
Yeah.
could like move. So
Right.
anyway,
Mhm.
those are open, so that was a choice.
Mhm.
And there's this like very young priest who is very obviously new. His phone starts going off playing Katy Perry's Firework, which is
An excellent choice.
another choice. But yeah, Bobby can immediately tell because he's very good at reading people because
Mhm.
that's what he does for a living. And what he does not just for a living, but it's what he's dedicated his life to for a lot of reasons. But he reads this person immediately and is like, okay, he is new, he is uncomfortable. Let me offer to like go do this where we don't have to look at each other like side by side, where it doesn't feel as formal, so he can kind of ease into the situation. So, but
Mhm.
that was a good way of showing, how he is still that same kind of like observant and considerate outside of work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like that kind of shows who Bobby is, but also this contrast between, the priest and kind of nervously admitting like, "Hey, I'm new." And then Bobby, it's really funny in that moment because, you know, cell phone goes off, I'm new, and Bobby's like, "But you're familiar with the basics of all how all this works." And it's just like that's so funny because you also see then like this is a very usual thing for Bobby. This is like habitual before we even get into like
Mhm.
um their conversation sort of
Mhm.
thing. And it kind of goes to compare and contrast how Bobby is like very experienced in kind of all ways of life. It seems like he's probably lived a number of lives
Mhm.
already
Yeah.
and he offers to make things a little less formal, a little less like stressful for the priest and like
The baby priest.
yeah, exactly. So he suggests to chat in the pews instead and he makes like a little joke. The priest is like, "I'm cool to, absolve you of your I think it's the venial sins. I'm not Catholic either."
Yeah.
Um
I
and
wish I could help. I forgot.
That's
we
hilarious.
have we have no first experience in this, okay?
If you asked me 10 years ago or no, not even 10 years ago, probably a lot more.
You're like, no, I deleted that
It's
from
fine.
my bank space in my brain.
Um,
Mhm.
but then he kind of jokes about, what if I had to confess a mortal sin? Like, ah, ha, ha. But also like
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
there was kind of like he
Just like
very much
funny,
plays it off.
haha. Yeah.
Mhm. He very much plays it off as a joke, but you're kind of
Yeah.
like left wondering a little bit if there's
Mhm.
anything kind of like under the surface of that a little bit. But he's so good at kind of like making the other person feel comfortable that it doesn't really even register. And in this scene when they're sitting out on the pews instead and they're having this like much more informal conversation as opposed to like straight up confessional sort of thing. It's almost like the roles are reversed, right? But Bobby is still doing the talking in this instance and the way the priest was like introduced, it's kind of like he's the audience surrogate in
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
kind of scene because I mean
It's an interesting way to look at it.
not only do we have a lot of exposition or a lot of like verbal explaining some of Bobby's backstory about and he says it very, kind of like blasé, a little bit removed. He was talking about, his alcoholism, his addictions, how he got his life back together. He's been back on the job at the fire department for like a year and a half. So the picture that we get of Bobby, which is also Bobby giving it to us
Mm-hmm.
or the priest because the priest has to be caught up on everything because he's brand new and who knows what
Oh
happened
yeah,
to
just like
the
we are. Okay, yeah,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
who knows what
I'm
happened to
following.
the other guy, so we have to the priest and us as the viewers
Sounds
have
so
to get.
ominous.
Wait, what?
It sounded really
You were like, who
ominous.
knows what happened to the other guy?
Oh. He probably just went to a different church. I don't know how
I
that
mean,
works.
there's probably multiple priests at churches in a
Maybe.
major
Maybe
city.
he went to a different time slotted confessional.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Maybe. That's
He's
possible.
fine. The other priest is fine.
Anyways,
I found it really interesting that at the beginning of his like actual confession, he says, "I was an alcoholic," and I thought that was interesting word choice.
oh yeah, I mean that the way Bobby is like portraying himself to this new person, to us essentially, is someone with a lot of experience under his belt that he is still kind of adjusting to new factors. He said he's been back on the job for a year and a half, which in the grand scheme of things is probably not very long to how long
Yeah.
he has like served as a firefighter, but he it sounds like he's really trying to put his past in the past.
Well, yeah,
Mhm.
and it's interesting because like we get simultaneously a lot of information and not a lot of information,
Yeah.
but we do. He is trying to like he is trying to like present himself, I think, in a way, the way he's wording it, that like I'm all better now, but like
Mhm.
I'm still doing this to like remind myself, to not go
Yes.
back down that path. But he said he spent a decade, 10 years of his life in this cycle of addiction where, he was in and out of rehab and his job forced him on leave. Like, that's a lot. And he's only
Mhm.
been back for 18 months. That's nothing compared to 10 years of that. So, yeah, he really
Right.
is like not new, but he kind of is, new to being sober and, back to work.
Mhm.
Exactly. And how he doesn't want to allow himself to end up back on the what he calls the wrong path
Yeah.
because he says it's easy for him to it could be easy for him to end up on there. So there's again this like implied, like very subtly implied, like he's probably been on and off the wagon in those, 10 years. And it seems he's putting on this kind of like it seems like he's doing great,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure and we'll see as we go through some of season 1. We're not always exactly sure how true that is.
Yeah. It's the information that he wants to give,
Mhm.
not necessarily all of the information, or the context of the information.
Yeah.
I also see like the priest also picks up on certain things that he says, being an alcoholic. And then, when he goes there, I mean, the reason why he goes there, aside from the fact that he likes to go to confession every week, um, he wanted to confess. I guess he wanted to be absolved,
Mm.
Yeah.
absolved from absolved from losing someone. And then again the priest is
Mhm.
picking up on that, right? So he's like, this
Mm-hmm.
is why you drank, or is this why you drank? And Bobby says something around the lines of, yeah, we find ways to cope. So that tells me that there's more to him, and can't wait to find out more.
Like a
Well,
lot
we
of depth.
already a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can't wait to rediscover it again,
Rediscover.
right?
Me over here
Yeah.
trying to like, I keep forgetting that I already watched this all the way through.
We've been through this once before.
Well, it's funny
fine. We can
because
survive.
I mentioned earlier that like I started on season 2. So like
Right.
it was wild when I went back to season 1. I was like, wow, how did I watch this without all of this context with Bobby, especially? Like, I mean, everyone, there's
I
more
helped you.
context. But, like, you did. Because there were a couple times that I was like, literally, what is happening? But
Yeah, sometimes you need that extra
yeah.
context.
But yeah, with Bobby, I was like, oh wow, they really were like, here's, you know, his major bullet points like right off the bat.
Mm.
So the last thing about his actual confession is when he says that when he brings up like losing someone on the job that week, he says it, I can't remember the wording, but he says it in a way where he's like like it's his fault. And I thought that was just very telling of how he is handling things, even though we don't have more context for these little clues that we're already getting in this episode. I just thought that was like another little crumb that leads into, you know, further information that we get.
I think that definitely is connected to the notebook thing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a mystery as of now.
Yeah, but he was staring at that thing real hard before he went into the confession, so you know that he was thinking about,
yes,
you know, the person that he couldn't save, and
yeah,
the context of yeah, he goes there every week, but like what made him go this week right after this event, and not just being like, oh, it was hard to deal with,
right?
So like at the very end of what we see of his confessional, as Syl said, like the priest was like, is that why you drank? And Bobby says, some drink, some do drugs, some gamble, some are sex addicts, and it's a hard cut to the fire truck, like racing crazy with the sirens on, like crossing the double yellows, running red lights. Some rock music is playing, and then we see Buck for the first time. And he... This transition is wild.
What an introduction.
I love it. What an introduction. So yeah, they really said we're going to introduce this character by calling him a sex addict.
Just straight up.
And then show him abusing his, you know, not only time at work, but a literal fire truck to track down a woman to hook up with her.
Which is so wild. to be doing this while you're on the clock.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they have long, like, they have like 24-hour shifts.
24-hour
right?
shifts, yeah.
But and that's a long time. But like,
I'm like, what's your excuse when you leave? Like, what are you saying? Yeah, I'm gonna like, what's the number of fire engine, car washes,
right?
Whatever that you've done? How many have you done?
Paper thin.
How many times a week are you washing the fire truck? And where are you? What car wash are you getting this washed at?
Where are the receipts? For reimbursement.
Exactly.
No, we'll see later. It's like a paper thin excuse. And go back to the how Bobby reacts to it and everything like that. But it's just like we did get a little glimpse earlier before his like official introduction, which is right here. But like during that first call with the drowning kid.
Yeah, we get a glimpse of all of them, but we're not like learning very much about who they are other than first responders who are good at their jobs.
But this is like the actual introduction, and it's just like immediately like 0 to 60. This character is
he was going over 60.
He was breaking so many laws, probably
180 actually.
We just like get this immediate sense of who this character is. He is flirty, he's freewheeling, he's reckless, he's a little cocky, full of himself. He uses his status to get like his quick fix sort of thing. And it's just like, you know, this is such a good shorthand into here's this character, and
here's this character.
And boy, is he gonna grow.
Yeah, and I would also just like to say it was a wild choice to have one of the first things that they say about this character.
Oh my god.
Be the girl that he pulls up Groovy Hills
Yeah.
297.
Yeah.
Who he's like picking up at the stoplight, where he tracked her down, I think through a dating app, and she was like, if you can like find me in 5 minutes or whatever, and she was like, you were cheating, and he was like, wait,
It's like she was in her car too.
He's like, wait, but you said,
where was she going?
how's that cheating, whatever. And she goes, is this why they call you Fire Hose? And he's like, nope.
Yeah.
I'm so yeah, I don't know. The first time, actually, I think I have the same reaction every time. I've watched it like 6 times now. But the fact that I didn't meet this book until after I had already watched
Oh my
over
gosh.
6 seasons was like,
You're like, who is this
insane
person?
to me.
Imposter?
I was like, well, I can see the roots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can see the roots of the character, but like, I didn't realize it was going to be like one of the literal first things that comes out of his mouth. But yeah, so we cut to like them finishing up their little afternoon delight.
Oh, that's those are very polite ways to put it.
Yes, in the fire truck. And then we immediately get a reference to his birthmark, and I forget if she's like thinks it's
Did you get
like
punched?
a bruise, like did you get punched or whatever, and he's like, it's my birthmark. And I did read something that apparently they originally were gonna have like every new character, like not the people who already knew him, but like every new character who saw him in the episode ask about it. I was like,
oh my gosh,
literally why? I'm so glad that it was like once, and I think that was like the only time.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad. No, I remember reading something similar that in other shows, I'm not sure if it's another Ryan Murphy show. I don't know which one, but there is I guess like they do follow that. Like if the actor has I don't know, some kind of physical attribute that stands out, they will mention it in a way.
Are you talking about Glee?
Is it? I don't know. I never
Glee.
watched Glee.
It's probably Glee.
It's Glee. Well, I mean, it's high school and it's bullies, and like, so yeah, it was just like very much honing in on any physical attribute that character could have been self-conscious about. So yeah,
it
was probably Glee.
I feel like if they had made more of a mention of it, sort of thing, there wouldn't really be a point to that unless they were to make it into something. But it's just like it's just like a natural part of the actor.
And I'm glad they didn't, because it's like,
yeah,
I don't know anyone that would ask. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a little uncouth.
I would literally look and I would be like, okay, that's part of his face, and that would be like the last time that I would notice anything different. You know what I mean? Like, it's just data.
It's also like the only thing that she asks about him. So like we see their hookup, and it's kind of almost like a subversion, right? Because here you have this here you have this guy. He's like, he's got this swagger. He thinks he's all like this hot stuff and everything like that. But he's the one that asks if he could have her real number, presumably so they could see each other again, whether for like similar kind of adventures, or like to go on a date sort of thing, like a more romantic thing. And she straight up is like, no, I think it would be better if we didn't get to know each other. So like once she leaves and exits the fire engine, he's like, oh, we're living in a golden age. But it's kind of like, I feel like he's almost trying to convince himself of that.
But you get a glimpse. Yeah, you get a glimpse, because like up until that moment where he asks, like he's so cocky, he's so, all full of smiles, he's so confident, lopsided smiles, whatever. And then as soon as it's like the moment right before he asks her, he looks a little more vulnerable and like maybe a little hopeful. And then when she's like, actually, like, this was fine, I don't need to see you again, basically. He puts, it was like, okay, he put it was like a mask slipping back on.
Exactly.
And so, and you get the feeling that this has happened to him a lot of times, possibly. It might be starting
a pattern
to get to him. It's a pattern that might be starting to get to him.
And then to that point, it's like, okay, well, is he really this kind of
This cocky person with all this swagger, is he really that? No.
With just that one little vulnerable moment, you
Mhm.
already get a glimpse into, oh, okay.
like maybe he's a little misunderstood by some of the people around him, like
Mm-hmm.
Bobby and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And maybe he isn't so much as of a self-diagnosed sex addict sort of thing, but maybe he's more searching for connection,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
like hiding or using this facade of these dalliances as the way that he knows how to connect, because it works for
Yeah.
him. He gets the response that he wants, but maybe not the one that he needs.
Yeah.
So that might be an interesting thing to see how that goes with his character and
Develops. Yeah.
development. Exactly.
So then we see him pulling back into the station, and he's looking like whatever the opposite of like sheepish is, like a
Oh
kid
yeah.
who knows he's in trouble, but that like he's daddy's favorite, so he's
He's
not
not too worried about it.
he's not really gonna get, you know what I mean? Like he's gonna get a dressing down, but like all he's gonna do is be
It's
like, go to your
fine.
room. Like you're not gonna get
It's just
grounded.
a
You're not
slap
gonna get
on the
your
wrist.
allowance taken away. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So, he's got his cocky, what we now maybe get a little glimpse is a facade somewhat back in place. And he like goes upstairs into the loft where everyone's getting ready to eat and starts picking food off of people's plates. And everyone's like, please wash your hands. Like, what? We don't know where they've been.
Mhm. He loves to push the envelope a little bit, is what we see
Yeah.
in this scene. Just kind of like
Hmm.
he's gonna, put up this kind of front that other people I think we see Hen, who we haven't talked about yet, but I think we see her
Yeah.
just kind of as she hears the engine come in, just kind of like take a pause, like, okay, or like roll her eyes or something like that, just kind of like steels herself to have to deal with this kid who thinks he's hot shot.
But yeah, so like he rolls up thinking like, I'm not gonna get in trouble. Like it'll be fine. Like I'll get yelled at, but I'm not really gonna get in trouble. But then he like does in fact get in trouble.
Mm-hmm. He gets strike
His
one.
dad is mad. Yes, he gets
Strike one.
strike one.
Yeah.
So they're sitting down to like try and eat their food and have a moment of peace. And of course, they have to go on a call. And
Right in the middle
this
of
is the
dinner.
call right in the middle of dinner, always. But this is the call where there is a baby in a waste pipe, which is just, I didn't even want to Google if that was a real thing. Like
I
Oh.
wanted to. I forgot.
I didn't.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, because I think I remember them saying, or I think it was Oliver
they're
Stark that said they pull a
inspired.
lot of.
I
Yeah.
did just have a brain blast of something that I did read was based off of a real thing, which is going to be wild when I tell you.
Oh my gosh.
Buck tracking down the girl in the fire truck, based on a true story.
That's real?
Yep.
Was that a Florida Man headline?
I don't know, maybe.
Because I think they have said they pull a lot of inspiration from true headlines, and a lot of them are Florida Man.
Why wouldn't you? It's good food.
Right for the picking right there, We love public
Oh my goodness.
knowledge and documents and stuff. Wait, so that was an actual story?
Yeah. I didn't read the story. I just like saw that it was based on a real thing, and I was like, you know what? I don't actually want to read the details, because like in real
Ooh.
life, this is
So wrong.
it is
So many
not it.
ethics violations.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But when it's your fave in a fiction, it's fine.
TV is fine. Yeah.
TV is fine.
You can.
Anyway.
These characters have never done anything wrong in their entire lives. I don't care what
They
you're saying.
haven't.
No.
They really haven't, especially Evan Buckley. So anyway, they show up to this call and they find a baby, and well, they figure out that the baby is in a waste pipe, because they hear a baby in the wall, like behind the toilet, and they figure it out. And Bobby is like knocking around to try and figure out where it is, and like marks the spot on the wall. But you can just see Buck standing there with the axe in his hand.
He's like so ready.
Getting like a more and more insane look in his eyes.
Mm.
And then Bobby says something like, okay, we need to like go now, or like something that was like, this is urgent, like we really need to go. And Buck starts, about to swing the axe, and Bobby is like, did you even think that you could have I don't know, Axe murdered a baby before you did this? And no, he did not, because Buck, in fact, does not think about anything before he does it, because the synapses go, here's an idea, and he's like, well, obviously, this is the best idea ever, and then he does it. Especially when there's like an urgency if he thinks he's going to save someone,
Mm-hmm.
And Bobby is like, the axe is not it. Please don't murder babies. Go get a saw.
Yeah, he wants so badly to like be the hero and earn the
He does.
but also like earn the respect of his team. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's not how you do it. That's how he thinks he's gonna do it, but the rest of them
Mhm.
are so not here for that. And it's hilarious for us to see Hen and Chimney just kind of react like, whoa, like, are you
Every time.
what are you
Yeah.
thinking? Like, are there brain cells?
We could meme every single facial expression that they make at him in this episode.
Yeah.
Totally memeable. And totally valid. Totally valid. Because I'm
True.
also making those faces at him, but then I'm also like kicking my feet and laughing because I'm just like, this is literally just who you are. This is still who you are. You just like, you have more experience.
hmm
So you know not to hit a baby with an axe. It's not that. It's just that he like knows better because he has more experience and he knows, oh, I should get a saw and
Mhm.
then jump in and do the thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know why it's just so funny to me that he almost fucking
Mm-hmm.
chopped into a child with an axe, but it is. Anyway,
Yeah, for someone who really wants to like save people, that's not exactly the way to do
that
it.
is not it. That is not it. But yeah, so flash forward to Buck actually now being helpful. When they finally get the baby out of the drain pipe or whatever, Bobby is carrying it and they go out and the elevator is not there and they're like, this is like urgent, we need to get this baby care. And Buck's like, put me in, coach, like give me the
Yes.
baby, like I'm
Well, that's
twice
exactly
as
what
fast
it
as
is.
anyone here. Yeah, and then he's like, okay, yeah, you take it. And Buck with children.
Oh yeah.
That's something special.
Let's
in the
take a
show.
moment.
Buck with children. Okay. He puts this little baby in his arms and he's looking at the baby, not the stairs, which I feel like is a little dangerous. But anyway,
I'm always, every time I watch, I'm so worried he's just gonna like trip.
I think he's just done it so many times that it's like, it's just second nature. But anyway, he's holding the baby. He's like, I got you. You're going to be okay. You're
Mhm.
going to be great.
It's very soft.
Ugh, very soft. So yeah, I don't know. He's just this person that makes you go, what? Literally, is there a brain cell in there? And then the next moment you're like, sweetest boy ever.
Yeah, but that's part of that facade coming down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was also going to just compare him to a golden retriever just now.
Go for it.
He's just no lies detected, right? I mean,
No.
Yeah, I mean, he's he just wants to be a good boy.
Oh my god, I almost just did a spit take.
He just wants to be good at his job. He's like so eager to like actually do good at his job, okay?
Yes.
He's a literal
He wants to be told he's a good boy.
Yeah.
He wants that
Mhm.
acceptance, validation,
Mhm.
praise.
He wants that validation so bad. He wants it from his team so bad, and like he also just wants. He does want to help people because he wants to be doing good because this job is meaningful to him, as we'll get into more later. But this is like I think the first moment you see him be serious.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
In the episode, and it's so soft and so cute, and then immediately the juxtaposition, he flip-flops to the other side because Athena brings the mother down to the ambulance after Buck has already gotten in there. They're about to close the door, and she's like, no, hold on, we have one more. And he's like, is that the mother? Absolutely not, screw her, like look what she did.
It's an immediate like othering. Like I've never kind of like seen that 180.
It's immediately like she did a horrible thing. She did a horrible thing. Absolutely. I do not care about that person. And you're holding me up from like
Saving
getting
a baby.
care for this baby who literally had like the most traumatic birth that you could possibly think of. So, and he's in like hardcore protective mode. He says with righteous fury, after the mother's in there, and he looks at Athena like with, oh my God, just like the most, I would fight you if a baby wasn't in my arms look. And it's like,
Absolutely.
if this baby dies, it's on you. And it's just like so many different sides of him.
That is no golden retriever.
No, that is bite, no bark.
No, he didn't care who he was talking to at that point.
No.
Mhm.
He just really wanted to save that baby, and
he didn't want, he was like, in his mind, he's like, this woman did something so horrendous, and like, not only are you going to hold me up from getting this baby to care fast as possible, but you're going to put her in here, you know, next to the child that she literally just flushed down a toilet. Like, I get it. I get that righteous fury, because I would immediately be like, I don't care that she's only a teenager. You know, there's right and there's wrong,
Mhm.
and this is messed up.
Yeah, it's so beyond his. Okay, so it's a very interesting like transition that we have. It's a couple different things. So he goes from being like, I'm gonna be the hero and I'm gonna, and I'm gonna save the baby, to wanting to do a good job. And
Yeah.
then you see kind of that, like, that hotshot facade fall again when he's just talking to the baby and making sure he gets her to safety. So it's that like underlying vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
that we're seeing little glimpses of come out again, and then it's just like so quickly 180'd, and then it's kind of ironic because then he has like he's on like a moral high horse,
Mhm.
sort of thing, and he's being like so disrespectful
Mhm.
to a sergeant.
Oh, he doesn't care.
Police officer.
That man has never cared about ranking
No.
or rules a day in his life.
No, but it's just
Yeah.
exactly like that plays into it. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't care what the other circumstances, anyone else with, for someone who wants the praise and wants to be seen as like good boy, if the situation calls for it, he will just be protective.
Yeah. I remembered a quote from earlier that ties into this, of especially the like the not caring about the rules, and we'll talk about it more later, but I just wanted to say, because it directly ties into what you're saying, is when he's like getting in trouble, you know, for the whole rendezvous with the fire truck. And he's like, you know, Cap, like it's like, put out the fires and the rest is blah blah blah. And because he just doesn't, he's like,
Yes.
whatever, if I do my job, you know, why would I care about the other rules? Because that's just semantics. Like, if I'm there when I need to be and I'm doing what I need to be, who cares, you know? So like, to him, that was a very good glimpse of like the way he looks at the structure of things, like institutions and rules and things like that. I digress.
Also kind of it's a little bit like, we'll go into this later, like he says later, like, the job is all he has.
Mhm.
So it's like, fight fires and the rest is blah blah blah. That's because there is no
There
rest for
is,
him.
yeah.
Everything else is blah 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 because this is his life.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have any other life.
Yep. It's that, and then the distraction or searching for something, whatever he's doing with his, you know, his little trysts.
Which again, he's not even doing off the clock. He's on the
He's
clock.
literally on the
Like,
clock in broad daylight in a fire truck parked on a main street in downtown Los Angeles. Yeah, man's a freak. So anyway, back to where we were in the present with him in getting the baby to the hospital. Then we see him get the baby to the doctors, and he's like, I'll see you in there. You know, like still saying like
yeah.
little encouraging things to them. He's so cute. But yeah, he's about to walk into the hospital, you know, after them, and Bobby stops him, and
he's like, "Where are you going?"
and Buck's like, I don't understand. Like, the baby is alive because of us. We saved the baby. Like, don't we have an obligation to see it through to the end, to make sure that they're okay? Because like, why wouldn't we? And Bobby is like, we'll be lucky if someone like tells us that they're okay. So that is a hard moment, I think, for the person that Buck is.
Yeah, it's like he has some difficulty. I mean, I imagine anybody would. It's really hard to compartmentalize in these kind of like high stress environment
Yeah.
jobs, but he finds it difficult to easily let go of those, like kind of move on to the next, which also I kind of feel connects him to Abby in a little
Yeah.
way, just in their character, like they want to know what
Yeah.
happens next. They care so
Mm.
much
Yeah, there's definitely a thread
that
there.
they want to make sure that is followed through. So it's just interesting to see that kind of like paralleled in a couple different ways because Abby is just just like more effusive, like she wants to care, she wants to
Yeah.
know that everything's okay, and whereas Buck is kind of like trying to push his way in.
Yeah.
It's understandable too because he carried that baby out of that building, like, he essentially did save that baby or was a part of saving that baby.
hmm
So
Mhm.
I don't blame him for having a hard time letting go because you wanna know, and I would even go as far as to say is Buck could be like the audience, like I also wanna know.
Mhm.
I wanna know what
The audience
happens.
surrogate, was that
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah, audience surrogate, because I would like to know what happens next to the baby
Yeah.
and the mom.
Mhm.
Does she keep the baby?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things, the story for us as the audience, like you just said, but also for the people helping on those calls, the story ends at the glass
hmm
doors of the hospital, which
Mhm.
is a kind of a thread that we'll see woven through a lot of season
Yeah.
1. So that's interesting too to see how it's kind of like set up in that way from the very get.
Yeah. I think it's probably even harder for Buck or, anyone who feels that kind of way in that kind of position compared to like Abby because Abby isn't even there. You know what I mean? So it's like
Mhm.
she has a very different role. So I think it's maybe a little
Yeah.
easier to not even be a part of like saving the person and getting them alive to the hospital and then having to
Mhm.
literally let go. Like that's it just feels like counterintuitive to like any sort of nurturing, caring nature someone has where it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I want to make sure that they continue to be okay because my job is to save
Yeah.
people.
Like,
But
turn around and bounce, like, "Gotta go."
exactly, if you're not, friend, family to the patient,
Yeah.
then it's like you literally have to stop there.
Mhm.
Unless sorry, I was gonna make a dumb joke. I was like, unless you're watching Station 19 and then it's a tie-in episode with Grey's Anatomy.
I No, that's actually literally what I was about to say. I was like, after you pass those glass doors, that's a completely different
It's a
show.
different show,
So,
literally a different show. Yeah.
it's a different genre.
Yeah. Yeah.
But connected. So it's kind of interesting if you see it from like a meta sort of,
Mhm.
zoomed out kind of lens. It's like, Grey's Anatomy or any of these medical dramas. And it's like that's what happens after, but like the 911 is the kind of stuff that happens like immediately preceding and you kind of get to fill in that gap between both of these kind
Yeah.
of shows, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. So, oh man. Um Athena rolls up. She followed them there because she was having none of
Yes.
it. Do not disrespect that woman. Oh my god. Like he was about to make an enemy for life. Like
Oof.
she was ready to throw her hands a little bit. But yeah, she
Mhm.
rolls up and she's like, "You don't get to decide who lives and dies. That's not what you
Mhm.
get to do." And we see that cocky face slip back on, and he's like, "It kind of is my job, though, like to do that."
And he did it well, and he knows
And
that,
he
and it's
did,
like,
yes. So it's like I
ugh,
understand, but it's like at the same time, it's like he is still mad at this woman. He hasn't let
Yeah.
that
mhm.
go. Like he hasn't suddenly changed his mind in the 5 minutes, that has passed.
No.
So of course he's gonna like dig his heels in and be like, okay, but it is my job. And she's like, you're gonna get someone killed one day. And he was like, maybe, but not today. Like,
Today's not that day. And it really could be like it could be any day,
yeah,
like we saw earlier
Mhm.
with the jumper, like, it sometimes it if you even if you try your best, like,
Yeah.
it
It's
happens,
it's
and there's no control over that.
it's sometimes out of their control.
yeah, but he hasn't
Yeah.
learned that lesson yet.
Mhm.
So he is still very much like cocky about it.
Yeah.
And pretty much just wanting to, throw it back in this woman's face, who in his
Mhm.
mind, enabled that woman who he has written off as a terrible person to receive medical care and delay. care of the child that she literally discarded. So, but he looks up like after she leaves because I think she like storms off, and because Bobby
And
and
Hen are
Hen were next to him, and he looks up like with his cocky look, and they look so fucking unimpressed. Like they don't say anything, but they're literally just about done.
I would say that was strike number 2 in retrospect.
Yeah.
Unsaid, yes.
Yeah, because I mean, well, we'll get into it more in a little bit with how Bobby, thinks about structure and rules and respect and all of that.
But before we do, we also see Buck's continuation of his bravado in the next in the next call, which was the girl who was being asphyxiated by her own snake, which is also such a choice to have in the pilot episode.
They were like, let's pick like 2 very normal things that you would think of, and then 3 of the most insane scenarios you could ever imagine.
Off the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they did a good job because they hooked me in.
They
I was unsure. I was so unsure because I'm not a procedural drama girly,
Yeah. But yeah, so this woman's getting, choked to death by her snake.
As one does.
As one does
apparently.
when you
She's
have a snake
a collector.
that is too large.
What was it? A python? Python, right?
I think it was a python. Yeah.
Or I thought it was like a boa constrictor.
Listen,
I
if
don't
you
know
can,
snakes.
if the snake is big enough to size you up, that snake does not belong in your house. Anyway.
I almost stepped on the grass next to a garden snake the other day, and I like jumped back about 5 feet. No snake.
I love snakes. I really do. I love them. I want to boop them on their snoots. Little danger noodles. But anyway. They're like, trying to figure out how to get this snake off, and Bobby's trying to like pry it off with his hands, and Hen is spouting off facts, and Buck says the equivalent of like just punch it in the face.
Which I think you can do to sharks.
Yeah, but it's a snake. It's gonna piss it off more and make it squeeze harder, probably. So yeah, that was his genius solution, and they continue to like try and figure out how to like get this snake off of her because she's losing her ability to breathe, and Buck just was like, actually, you remember the axe from earlier?
Still want to use that.
I actually figured out the correct use for it, which is right now, and he just fucking, like Harry Potter and.
Are you saying he's Neville Longbottom?
A little bit.
I can't believe you just made this reference.
It's kind of the movie did. But yeah, that was wild. Anyway.
Oh
it's
my
just
God.
Another great example of how he literally does not think before he does things, and like to him he was like, well, that was the proper solution because like she was dying, no one was coming up with anything, and I had the axe, and like it's a snake or person, obvious hierarchy, it's my job to save people, not snakes. So
like it must be so frustrating for I think we get a little like inkling with Hen and Chimney, which we'll discuss a little bit later, but it must be so frustrating for them to see Buck, who's just like, kind of like swinging his axe around.
His fire hose, if you will.
Oh my God.
Still is so done with us. I'm sorry, it was right there. What was I trying to say? Okay. The euphemism was just it was right there. It was right for the taking. Anyways, so it must be frustrating for the rest of the 118 to see Buck just kind of like gung-ho and like charge right into things and not even give it like a second glance where they're like really trying to
figure out the best way to do
problem
things.
solve and exactly. And then it works out for him.
And it just works out for him.
Like it works out for him multiple times.
Works out for him
So-
most of the time. I mean,
Yeah, which is this like incredible like positive reinforcement kind of thing that like has to kind of get beaten out of him just to like for the benefit of the rest of the team. But it's just like it's really funny because he does it because it works.
it works.
For him.
So I mean, I don't know.
Can you blame him a
He
little
saved-
bit?
I mean,
like
I probably would have done the same thing, even though I love snakes. It's like, what else were you going to do in that situation?
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, Hens was like the most humane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
he just did it in the funniest, most Buck way possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mhm.
guess good for him.
As long as it worked, you can't really argue with results
Exactly.
sometimes.
And the
Exactly.
results bring him to
Oh my god! So
the little
he
snake
freaking-
girl.
Yeah, he kills the snake, and then he like I don't know, leans down and starts rizzing her up about something about saving pretty people, and Hen is immediately like, I cannot stand here and watch stupid people flirt. Like this is disgusting, and like it kind of was.
Like she was so open to it too,
Oh,
which was also
dude,
kind of
and
like questionable.
Yeah.
I mean, like
And that's your pet snake, right? Or whatever collector. I don't care. You raised, fed, and whatever that snake. And
yeah,
you're
but if
just
Evan
like-
Buckley is in front of you, putting the Riz on, what are you gonna do?
That's a fair point.
What are you gonna do? Say no?
Again,
Mhm.
it just works for him.
It just works for him because he is charming and pretty.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then we flash forward to I think Bobby like hunting him down.
We flash forward, so it's a shot of like an aerial shot
Okay.
of the fire engine with
Right.
the ladder like all like fully extended
Okay.
towards the roof of a building.
Yeah.
And then Bobby's pulling up in his little like battalion car. I just starts climbing up the
Mhm.
ladder and
And then what does he find on the ladder again in broad daylight
Mhm.
on a roof?
roof
and,
this time,
and
though.
again, Los Angeles. He finds him and the snake girl in a compromising position on a lawn chair, which is just so funny and trashy.
so romantic.
It is giving Florida headline is what it is giving.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like Bobby is done, and he's like, the girl should leave, and we're gonna talk about it more when we talk about Bobby and him next. But basically, Bobby fires him.
Yeah. He gets a talking to, and
He gets a talking to. Bobby fires him.
We go straight to strike 3.
Yes,
Yeah.
we skipped
You're
2,
out.
or like,
Like-
as we mentioned, like it was a silent strike 2, maybe with how he treated Athena,
Mhm.
and then how he doubled down on how he treated Athena.
And then how we also doubled down on his
on this same exact infraction.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So anyway,
his rendezvous.
so we see him in the locker room, like gathering his things. He looks very sad.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, just a quick mention, like we kind of already mentioned it, but
Yeah.
but Buck comes back at him like, kind of broken now that he's been fired, and is like he iterates like the job is his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have anywhere else to go.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we see him still at the fire station.
Kind of just sitting there because he doesn't want to go. And so he's like, maybe if I
Yeah.
just sit here, like
Where's
he'll
he gonna
change his
go?
mind, or like, it won't be real if I don't leave here. He's just looking dejected. And Hen comes in and sits down with him and is like, basically like, this sucks. I'm sorry. And he's like, it's my own fault. And she's like, yeah, we all think that.
Mhm.
But like, it's, but in a way that she's like, it's nice that you acknowledge that you like,
Mhm.
this is character growth, you know what I mean? Like he's saying like he's admitting that he is at fault, that he did something wrong.
Yeah, he's recognizing the fault
Yeah.
that and the role that he's played in his own kind of downfall or demise in a way, because even though he like cared so much, and you can tell he cared so
Yeah.
much, like when that facade drops, but the way he carried himself was not gonna work.
So we will I want to talk more about when we talk about Hen, I want to talk about that conversation
Mhm.
more, but they get interrupted by a call. And so Hen leaves with everyone, and Buck is left there, presumably still just like chilling, looking dejected, and not wanting to leave.
And we know he was there for a while.
Yeah, he was there for a while because Hen ends up calling him to help with the next call, which is, well, it's not a 118 call. It's an Athena call.
Mhm.
But she ends up calling him to help with this home invasion because they need a fire truck to like put some sirens to locate this 9-year-old girl who's alone, and they don't want to
During a
use
home
during the home
invasion.
invasion, and they don't want to use the police sirens to like spook
Tip him off.
the criminals and make them do something to her in the process. So Buck gets called back in by Hen unofficially. So he's fired. He's taking the fire
He's
truck
taking
out
the
again,
whole
but like
fire-
this time he doesn't even work there, so he doesn't have like any right to be driving it. But yeah, so he's doing it for a call, and he shows up, and Athena's like, you.
Oh yeah.
Like it's her arch enemy.
He kind of
He
is
kind of
in
is.
this case.
And she's like,
they are not on the
yeah,
best of terms.
she's like, okay, whatever. Like, just do what you're told and no heroics. You know what I mean? Like, just don't fuck this up, basically. So yeah, he is a good boy and he does what he's told until the one of the criminals is trying to escape, like on a motorcycle and shooting a gun, which is like kind of skillful. Which was a random thought I had. Because I was like, pretty good aim. Like he was aiming for Athena and like almost got her. Like he wasn't very far off, like driving on this motorcycle. And Buck decides to step in and do heroics, and he takes this guy down in the most funny way possible, which is to just shoot him with a water gun, basically.
Yeah.
With a fire hose.
His namesake,
yeah,
if you will. I'm sorry.
Listen, they made the joke. It's not. We're not. They made it.
We're just
so
running
we're allowed
with it.
to exactly say fire hose in front of a mirror 3 times, and Evan Buckley shows up.
Anywho,
That would be quite something if that worked.
Anyway, so he stops the guy, and possibly saving Athena because he was shooting at her, and he was close the last shot. And Athena kind of gives him like a a respectful nod, not like she doesn't say thank you or anything,
No.
but she gives him like a respectful nod, which is a lot because she was ready to like choke him with her bare hands.
Yeah.
I feel like.
But his bravado and like desire to be the hero, like again it kind of worked in his favor a little bit, but it also shows like that he can kind of like assess a situation a little bit better, and that at the end of the day he does want to have like his team's back.
Yeah.
Which we'll see again in the first episode of season 2.
The quick thinking that he's been having throughout all these calls actually was very useful at this point because I mean, the snake was also useful. Save the person.
It's part of the reason
choice.
that he is good at the job is because he is really good on his feet and he's good at improvising.
Yep.
But it's also like he doesn't have the experience to yet go along with that. So it's like he needs to learn, and he is learning that in situations where, he doesn't have anything that's even related remotely to that experience to like take a second and go, boop, 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 okay. You know what I mean? Like literally just a little bloop to think about it. And we can make better decisions. Then I don't know. I feel like maybe the first thought that went in his brain was like, tackle the man on the motorcycle. And then he was like, wait, no.
No.
Yeah.
Man has gun.
Wait, no.
Bad idea.
And then immediately he was like, oh, I could do this. And also for the drama, like it would just be funny.
Yeah. Which it's actually it is actually kind of funny though that like he's been using the fire engine as I don't even know how to explain it, but he's been utilizing the fire engine in such a specific way that to be able to use it there then at this point as a tool, like in his like mental toolbox for something more productive.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, in a different way. And I'm sorry.
Oh my god.
But to
You
use
know what?
it in
If
this
I
way
had-
that it helps save the day.
If I
you know?
had,
I'm not usually like this.
you know what? I'll do it anyway.
She's like, I'm gonna pretend it's alcohol. She's like, I will be drinking during our next episode because you two are too much.
That's fair. So yes, he's utilizing the fire engine in a very different way.
Yes.
But in a way that, helps save a couple lives.
Exactly.
And that his like, even though Athena said like no heroics,
Mhm.
and that was, I think, kind of definitively heroic. It was,
But it was also
done, I think-
smart because he didn't put
it was
himself
done in a smarter way.
He didn't put himself in danger, which he absolutely
Yeah.
the first thought again
Or anyone
was,
else in
Yeah,
danger.
exactly. I'm sure the first thought was stupid.
And I think that's what helps earn him some
Yeah.
respect
Mhm.
back in Athena's eyes. Like she doesn't like him.
No.
She doesn't have to like him.
No.
But
She's like, real recognizes real.
she understands that he's good at what
Yeah.
he does, and
Yeah.
it's like, and it makes sense.
And that he cares and that he's not
him.
just,
Yeah. Exactly.
what he appears to be, which is a fuckboy who doesn't actually care about anything except being right and like running in and like being the hero for the accolades of it all,
Yeah, I think she, and to an extension a little bit Hen, are some of the first people that kind of acknowledge that there's more under the surface. I think Bobby hasn't quite figured that out yet because he's
No.
trying to make it, he's trying to people please essentially and make Buck comfortable in the situation. But I think Athena and Hen are kind of the first to see a little bit more under the surface with Buck, or like kind of recognize or like actually understand,
Mhm.
as opposed to like wanting to or hoping, but like actually seeing him
Mhm.
for a little bit more of who he is
He
underneath
actually is, yeah.
yeah underneath the
His little cocky persona. I mean, like, he is kind of cocky, but like the way that he's doing it, for the first half of this episode is very
he's
much
using it as a crutch.
He's using it as a mask. Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like we should talk about Bobby and Buck's relationship, because I feel like that's a huge crux of this episode and kind of where the rest of talking about what happens in this episode goes. As far
It's
as
been so hard to talk
Buck's,
about it.
I know, yeah,
kind of
Yeah.
separately.
I know. But yeah, so I guess we have to go back a little bit and talk about that little come to Jesus moment in the loft back at the station.
Yes.
When Buck gets back from his first tryst of the day.
Mm.
And Bobby is like, listen, I like you. You're a good firefighter. And I know we got this thing. You call me Pops. And I give you a hard time for being a dumbass kid. We went to a Springsteen concert together. Hilarious.
I want to see that so bad.
And he says, but this is not a family. It's not a clubhouse. So I'm writing you up. And the looks that cross Evan Buckley's face during this dressing down were so much for me. Saw about 40 different micro expressions.
You really did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kudos to Oliver Stark for that.
It's like, like we said, like he rolled up thinking like, I'm Dad's favorite. And yes, I did something wrong, but he's just going to put me on the snoot and then, newspaper to the nose. And then I'm, just a slap on the hand. And then everything will be fine, because that's probably what has happened up until now.
he doesn't understand consequences.
Yes, exactly.
No, and the way he responds, which is, "Come on, Bobby, see the fire, put out the fire. The rest is blah blah." I mean,
Yeah.
he learns throughout the episode that there's more to that. It's not just putting out fire.
Yeah, it's not just that. And I put Buck responds in favor of bucking the rules as long as he does his job, because I'm hilarious.
I love when he bucks a trend.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
What a great name for him, though. But yeah, Bobby interrupts him and says, like, the system and the rules are not arbitrary. Like, they're here for a reason. And this is your first infraction, and 2 more, you're out. And then tells him to wash his hands.
Just for practicality. But yeah, I think it's kind of like the first time Bobby has to really like give Buck some tough love.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like he really seems to be the kind of captain that, wants everyone to get along and wants everyone to be happy
He's
and like
gentle parenting.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Exactly. He gentle parents.
Yeah.
Maybe a little too close to the sun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he doesn't like it when he has to play bad cop. Essentially.
I don't think he's had someone like Buck who does not respond to that, because it's like you give him an inch, he's going to take a mile every single time. So it's like, no, you have to actually teach him that there are repercussions, or
Yeah.
he will keep doing that thing. Like, he's not going to
It's
go,
like-
oh, but like, I guess I'll be good now because like he's just so nice to me and so understanding. And like, no.
You gotta condition him.
Exactly.
You gotta train him.
You got to train your golden retriever, okay?
And then it's interesting then, like when they're, Buck goes and presumably washes his hands.
hope
And then
so.
Chimney points out he better. Chimney points out to Cap, it's not helping.
Mm-hmm.
It's not helping Buck
Yeah.
to go easy on him. And Bobby's like, he just needs a little
Yeah,
direction.
like it'll be
So
fine.
I think Bobby's kind of like trying to gentle parent
Yeah.
as much for himself in this instance, because he doesn't want to be like the like overbearing like captain. But like also Bobby says it's not a family, it's not a clubhouse,
Mhm.
it's a fire station. But the way Bobby has kind of
Treated him.
treated him, but also the way it appears at this point that the station is set up, they're getting ready for dinner.
Mhm.
They're all having dinner together as a team, as a family. So for Bobby to say like it's not a family, but his words aren't exactly lining up to his actions
No.
there, and that just kind of like goes towards his his want to
Mhm.
like make everyone comfortable,
Mhm.
and he doesn't like it when there's
And
conflict.
And a little bit how he's trying to present versus how it actually is, because I know Bobby is invested in these people and he doesn't want to be. Past the working relationship.
He's trying so hard
Yeah.
to keep himself at arm's length, but like that is not
He's bad
what's
at it
actually
because he is
happening.
literally dad. He's literally dad.
I did write that in my notes. I said he is so dad.
He is so dad, and he's a great dad. But yeah, when your dad tells you that this is not a family, ow.
Yeah, it's gotta stay.
Like the look on Buck's face was, oh man, that was rough. And it was like when Bobby started that little dressing down, like you see Buck look over at Hen like, here we go, and she's like,
can't help you.
You know what I mean? It's like when you look at your sibling and you're like, and then they're like, he's expecting like a side eye and a laugh, or like a moment of like understanding, camaraderie. Yeah, exactly. And she's literally just like, no, I'm not giving you anything.
You dug your own grave.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to dig yourself out.
Yeah.
Look, so Bobby and Buck, like obviously they have like right off the start, the show establishes that there is a father-son type of relationship, plus like a mentor-mentee type of relationship.
Yeah.
So, with the baby, when we're at the glass doors of the hospital, like this is where Bobby is showing Buck like, well, he's basically this is like an example of how he mentors him, to pass on the responsibility that he needs to just like go and move on to the next thing. So this is just happens to be another example of how he's being mentored by Bobby.
I think now that you say like it's a good example of how Buck does listen to him, which is probably why he was still
he's lasted
gentle parenting, and how he's lasted this long. Where it's like he's not completely closed down to being trained, being taught, learning.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's only in we're shown that it's only in certain ways in this episode. So,
But Silly, you bring up a great point though, because it lets us be privy to kind of what we can't see, like the history beyond where we were just kind of like dropped in at the beginning of this episode, where there is more of a push and pull sort of relationship. Like it's not just one sided, like
mhm.
Buck pushing. Like obviously, if that was only, if this was only his first strike at this point, and I don't think we know exactly how long he's been at the well,
I think it's his first year there.
yeah, okay. So we can kind of not imply, what's the word? Inform.
Yeah.
We can kind of inform that there has been uh this relationship kind of set in place, and it hasn't been all one-sided Buck pushing, but
Yeah.
like this more, there's more balance to it than it seems.
Yeah. Well, because
It's just
Bobby
like a
isn't a
bad day for Buck.
pushover. Yeah, Bobby isn't a
Yeah.
pushover. So if Buck was completely unreceptive to learning, he would have been long gone, even if this is very early days, in his job there. Like Bobby does not mess around on the job with,
Yeah.
the importance of doing the actual job right. So, how embarrassing to be caught by your father, just first of all.
Your father and your boss.
Your father and your boss, and like, what an embarrassing position in just like broad
Literally.
daylight. Like, I don't know. I would have just died.
I would have just quit.
Yeah. It's like, actually, you don't even need to say whatever you're about to say. Like, you will never see me again. I'm moving. Yeah, but anyway. So Bobby is basically like, this is the same infraction in 2 days, like, after I wrote you up. Like, this is disrespectful to me. Like, you're showing me that you don't take this seriously. And you're still doing it, like, while working. And then he calls him out for the womanizing and how it's disrespectful, like, in general, but also to their female coworkers, that like him, just doing this shit on the clock is disrespectful to women. And then Buck says that he thinks he might be a sex addict. And I think, he says it like with a little tone in his voice that makes it sound like he's like joking, and that triggers Bobby because he's like, this isn't a joke. And I don't think Buck was joking. Like I think he legitimately thinks that there's something, like, he knows there's something wrong. He knows there's something wrong, that like he's doing these things that like he knows he shouldn't be doing, but because he's searching for something, he keeps doing them. So to him, he's like, well, it's like he feels the need to find connection. I'm guessing, and then he continues to seek that out by, being physically and intimate with people, but not actually intimate in the way that he is probably looking for, which is not sex addiction, but to him and how he's understanding, where he is, he's like, he knows that there's a problem there.
Yeah, I don't think he is fully. He doesn't have the self-awareness yet.
No.
To really like look inward.
I don't think he wants to.
And he doesn't want to.
No.
He's kind of introspectively looking just like at the surface also. So like he's projecting this kind of like surface, more shallow self, but he's also like,
and anytime
he doesn't want to go deeper.
Yeah, and anytime he's forced to like lift that up a little bit, he's trying to do as little as possible. You know what I mean? But yeah, so Bobby starts like walking away because he's said his piece and he's done. With this person who he thinks does not care and is disrespecting everything that Bobby stands for, which is that job and the people who work there and the station itself. And Buck is like pleading, I need this job. I love this job. Don't do this to me. I don't have anything else. and he looks like absolutely gutted. Like he is not okay.
I know it's such a heart-wrenching moment of like actual vulnerability
Yeah.
where like all of the walls are down
Yeah.
because this is his last resort. Like he lives for his job.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have anything else. And I think that's not that I think they would have had a lot of time to really get into, seeing all of the characters, like their home lives, like we saw with, like a little snippet with Chimney or with Abby and stuff like that. But the fact that we don't see Buck outside of work at all, like we see Bobby at the church.
That's true.
We don't see
Hen.
Hen yet.
No, we don't. That's true. We don't get
but
a
for,
lot
like-
of Hen in this episode, though.
I know it's kind of disappointing, but we'll get more of her.
We'll get more. We'll get plenty of Hen. She'll get her flowers.
But like we even see Athena's home life. So to see like the essentially Abby, Bobby, Buck, Athena, essentially like the four primary characters in this
episode, the focal,
and you see their home lives and their professional lives, but not Buck's. I think that's very telling. Like he's
this is all he has,
telling the truth.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so devastating.
Yeah.
Even though he kind of did it to himself.
He did it to himself, and he says
he has to learn.
He says he did. He knows.
He flew too close to the sun, like Icarus, and he fell way, way down. I mean, granted, he was on a roof. But
I felt the comedy elbows on that one. Yeah.
But metaphorically, yes, he was soaring so high, especially with those winds.
Yeah.
With the baby and the snake, and we haven't gotten to the home invasion at this point yet. But he's on a high, he's coasting, he's happy with life, and then crash down. But it's because of his own choices, and he had to learn some tough love.
Yeah.
Like actions have consequences.
Yeah.
And you can't be out for yourself in this kind of job. You have to be able to rely on your team. And I feel like once Buck is able to do that, he's going to mesh really well.
Yeah.
With the rest of the team, which is what we see. Like that's not going to be a surprise. So it's heartbreaking, but it's like it's for your own good.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make it better.
It really just takes losing your job at the end of the day, like the worst possible outcome out of this, to really give him.
We're losing everything to him. Yeah, it's like rock bottom. Yeah,
yeah, to really give him that wake up call. But we'll get to that part later.
I did want to say one more thing about this part, in reference to kind of the sex addict thing, because I was just thinking about why he like did the thing again, within 2 days. And I think it's like just this like prime need for him to feel validation. And because he is contextually good at sex and he gets validation from his partners, even if he is getting that like rejection of them not wanting to see him again, he's still getting validated, and not just by the act itself, but like,
this is a great point.
So I think that might feed into why he thinks he might be a sex addict, because he is not addicted, but he craves that validation in a way that like
validation and connection.
Yeah,
which is
exactly
how he copes with things.
Yeah.
So I totally get it.
Okay, so after Buck does his heroics at the home invasion and he gets back to the firehouse and he's rolling up in the engine again, kind of mirroring back to earlier in the episode.
Exactly.
And he did this without permission, and he's not in his uniform, and he's also fired.
So it's just like the cherry on top of, he did all the wrong stuff, and then he proceeds to continue to do the wrong stuff. Like it again, on the surface, it kind of looks like he hasn't learned this lesson.
Yeah.
and he's just going to continue doing, just like the same things, the repetition of doing the same thing again and again and again.
Yep. But Bobby says that like Athena called and said something about him being an asset.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I didn't write the exact quote, but it was to the effect
Yeah.
of Athena was pretty impressed
Yeah.
with Buck and
saying he's good at his
that-
job,
Exactly. Basically implying like he should kind of get it back. Which is a lot coming from her
Mhm.
as well, and it really shows the gravitas
Yeah.
of what he did for her.
And how he held himself in that situation and how he thought things through. And
Exactly.
Especially coming from someone who had skyrocketed to Buck's #1 hater earlier in that same day.
So quickly.
So yeah, Bobby tells him that Athena called and said nice things about him. And he's like a puppy, like, are you giving me another chance? Bobby's like, you used all of them. And so have I. And like, somehow I've failed to communicate how lucky we are to do what we do,
Mhm.
like kind of blaming himself for not getting Buck to succeed in the way he wanted him to, but still being firm about like, no, you use your chances, even with this good feedback about how you can apparently do better.
Mhm. No, it's really, really interesting there that Bobby is the one that Bobby takes the fall almost for like him failing Buck
Yeah.
about all of this, where
Yeah.
it's like he was gentle parenting Buck, like he was giving Buck all of the
All of them.
opportunity to
Yeah.
kind of like turn this car around
Mhm.
sort of situation. But like it shows a lot of humility for Bobby, but also like in also kind of like it's not like necessary in this sense exactly.
Mhm.
I mean, I know maybe it's because he's as captain, he feels like extra responsibility for everyone
Yeah.
else. So like and the captaincy is the perfect job for him because he wants other people to succeed. So when they don't succeed, he sees it as a failing
Mhm.
of him. But then with what Buck says next, responding to Cap saying that, he does acknowledge, and it has really been,
I thought it was very important, for the arc we see of him in this episode, because
Mhm.
he's now stripping all of it back. He's stripping all
Yeah.
of those masks and the cocky facade, everything. And he says, "You're wrong, Bobby. I absolutely do get what a privilege it is to serve here. And you know what? You were right to fire me like I was a punk. I still am one, but I'm a punk who understands what he lost."
Mhm.
And it's just
Like
so
that's everything that Bobby needed to
Yeah.
hear.
Yep.
And everything that Buck needed to understand.
Mhm.
And like you just said, it was like this complete shedding of, I guess, almost kind of like a metamorphosis in a way. Um like this shedding of all of this armor
Yeah.
and mask and facade that Buck relies on, and it's like it's because, or maybe one of the reasons that he does this is because he realizes that this shedding and this metamorphosis and kind of like um trying to be a better firefighter in this way is what's going to get him the connection.
Yeah.
And that he's kind of craving, like this, um, like being part of a team, like because he had Athena's back, and then
Mhm.
she kind of went to bat for him. So it's this reciprocal kind of echo chamber,
Yeah.
positive reinforcement that he was looking for in a better way.
Yeah.
And he's realizing he can get it
Mhm.
by doing this instead.
Yeah, and I think the job is really important to him, but I also think that he wants these people to be his people, Like he is already invested in trying to like insert himself into that dynamic that like especially Chimney and Chimney and Hen have. Like,
Mhm.
you know, he sees what they have and he's like, I want to be part of this thing where it's like the family of it all. That's like,
The
it's not a
family
family,
aspect.
but you know, he wants to be a part of that. So as important as the job is, I really think that doing the job at this station with these people is really like what he's, you know, I think the like crux of why he's willing to like show his,
Mhm.
not to use this term again, like the raw nerve, you know, underneath all
Yeah.
of that to show his vulnerability, where it's like opening himself up for rejection, which for someone whose like biggest motivator that we see in this episode is getting validation,
Mm-hmm.
to put
Yeah.
himself in that situation to feel even more rejection when you're being that vulnerable is a lot.
It's kind of like he's doing his own version of jumping off a ledge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is also kind of interesting, paired with, you know, the jumper
Mm-hmm.
call we saw from earlier, but also the fact that like what when I was talking about Icarus falling, he flew too close to the sun, so he's falling,
Yeah.
and like the roof, so he's still kind of like metaphorically he was on that roof,
Mm-hmm.
but coming back and having and learning that like humility is him essentially like jumping off the roof. Also, I guess kind of like a metaphor of, you know, Bobby is the daddy bird and Buck is like flying the nest
Mm-hmm.
essentially, like kind of taking off and learning to fly in his own way. I don't know if that's like a really that's a
No, I
that
see.
might be one of the Rachel Red string metaphors.
I see.
I'm grasping.
I see where you're going with that. But yeah, his vulnerability pays off because it just works out for him.
He's a lucky son of a gun.
There's also an undercurrent theme of choices that he makes, you know, and you know, a lot of some of the choices that he's made throughout the episode are probably not the best, to put it lightly. But I think
Understatement.
Listen to Sil Gentle Parenting. Honey, some of the decisions you made today were not the best. You almost chopped a baby with an axe.
yeah,
Let's review.
but yeah, like I think what I'm trying to get at is that he finally makes, after a lot of reflecting, I guess, after losing everything, he finally makes the right choice, and
Yeah.
he chooses to
Mhm.
he chooses this quote unquote not family, um,
We all know what it is.
and
Come on.
You didn't even see it in this first episode, you know.
yeah, but yeah, so choices are made, and he finally gets around to making the right one, and he chooses.
No, I see what you're saying. It's like he
Mhm.
chooses to show that he takes it seriously and that he
Thank you.
he
Yes.
cares he
Yeah.
cares about it,
Mhm.
you know?
And
Not just about like being the hero, but that he cares about and respects what they do and the people that he works with. And it's probably a side of Buck that Bobby has never seen.
Mm.
Yeah, he just says, "I hope you mean that," and like tells him to get dressed.
and gives him a second chance
And gives him a
anyways.
second chance or whatever number they're on.
But real quick, Scylla, what you were saying about choosing and choosing family, I think is a theme that we can see in here as well,
Mhm.
because we have Buck choosing to be a part of the 118, which we know will be his family. We also have Athena choosing her family at the end
Mhm.
when she's on the phone with Michael and he's like, "Are we still not talking?" She's like, "We're still not talking." But he asks if he can save her a seat or a plate at dinner, and she's like, "Yeah." So she's choosing her family there, and also we see Abby choosing her family because she's just she's taking care of her mom. So like that's an interesting thing to have caught on to, Sil,
Yeah.
that like I didn't even pick up on
So-
as like a theme of the episode.
Good observation.
Yeah.
So, well, speaking of Athena, let's just touch on, you know, the little bit of her that we haven't yet, which is seeing her at home with her family and that dynamic there.
Okay, so you have May and Harry whispering at the table. Athena clocks that. She's telling them to speak up. because it's tense. Michael, her husband, and Athena are not talking necessarily. The kids can see that. They can tell that there's something wrong with their parents, and they're having breakfast together as a family. The shot is very interesting actually because you have Athena at the head of the table, and
I
then
caught on to this too. Yes.
you have the kids and Michael on. So the kids are on one side, I think on the left, and Michael's on the right. But they're closer to the camera, and Athena is a little bit farther out in the center. In regards to what is revealed at that table, which is Michael, he is coming out to his kids as gay, even though Athena was not ready. So doesn't want to be a part of that conversation necessarily, but Michael is coming out. So you have the situation where it is news to the kids that he's gay, and they're trying to figure out like what kind of responses are we gonna have, and that ties into also like what is really up with them. May has a reaction.
She has a reaction.
A reaction.
That's a word.
She has a reaction. God, I don't remember the exact quote, but I know she was like,
It was basically like, I don't care if you're gay, but don't tell anyone. It
yeah.
was like, yeah.
And then I don't think Harry had a reaction, did he?
I don't think verbally, no. Like if there was, it was probably just facial
I remember now.
expressions.
They were, I guess, the two of them on their own, they were like, oh, are mom and dad going to get a divorce?
A divorce, yeah.
And I think that was before Michael came out to them.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, because they...
Like he knew something
Well, yeah,
was
because
up.
like the vibes were simply atrocious. And like you could, they're not talking, but like, she's like side-eyeing him and like ignoring him and moving around him in a way that is clearly like the body language says everything of how, how they're feeling towards each other at that moment. And the kids pick it up because kids are not stupid. And they even say like, you're fighting, you guys never fight. So like what's going on? Are you going to get a divorce? And that's when Michael is like, I don't want to lie to my kids, basically. Like I'm going to do it. And Athena is like, I'm not, she hasn't even adjusted to it yet. So she doesn't want to like add in the layer of, having to deal now go into mom mode for this. She wasn't even dealing with it as a person first, as a wife. And so now she has to deal with and prioritize their reactions and their feelings. So she was not ready for it.
She was so ready to just like deny everything. Like it wasn't just that she wasn't ready to talk about it with the kids, which is a conversation that maybe should have happened while they were both on the same page. Which is interesting about that shot that you said of the family table, because it totally like cuts her off. And it kind of like poses her as like an outsider even within her own family. And afterwards, so after they have the conversation at the table, and she and Michael are just like going at it about,
After the kids leave,
yeah,
they go to school, I think. Yeah.
No, they're waiting actually.
Oh, they're waiting for them? Oh, geez.
Yeah, or it's even before they go to school. They're still in the house. They're just out of the room.
So they're yelling and the kids are hearing everything. What an awkward conversation to hear.
Yeah. Which is how they know what's going on. But it's like Michael's telling her that like she's willingly like in denial about who he is, and she has been the entire time, but she's also like in denial about herself a little bit, and whether she knew consciously or subconsciously about Michael, or the holding herself to expectations that she had for herself. This kind of like denial stems from, I think, pride a little bit, and how she saw her perception of her family and herself, especially, because she said, it's like humiliating to her.
Yeah.
But is it humiliating because of Michael and the way that he is, or is it humiliating because she maybe had an inkling of this for a while, again, subconsciously or not, and she didn't give that any like light of day?
I think it's definitely oh man, I was gonna say it's definitely this, but I'm like, maybe it's an adjacent word. but I think it's related to her pride because Athena is a very confident woman who asserts herself and always holds herself as uber confident and knowledgeable, and so it just hurts her pride and then gets her hackles up, when they're fighting about it, because even if she knows on subconscious level that like she did know that he was gay, she is not ready to like admit that to herself and wound her pride even further.
And then there's a point because Michael, I guess, calls her out. So there's a point in this conversation or argument where they said that they both wanted this family. They both wanted those kids. But Michael points out that subconsciously she did know, but
chose to ignore it because she wanted
because
she wanted a family, and he said something about
I guess because she was older. She was getting older.
Yeah.
And her
like
biological clock or
lovely stuff. But that's also like going back to choosing family. Like he said, both of them wanted this family, so that kind of like not overcompensate, like overwrote everything else in a way, But it's also interesting too, because like Athena pushes back about this, of course, because she is a very like generally confident, authoritative woman. But it's interesting too because it kind of parallels her to Buck a little bit in their like pride,
She's not impulsive. I mean, we'll see more of her and her choices, the way she makes her choices later in the season, but she's tactical about her choices. I think she considers those choices, but there is a level of pride that, could coincide with Buck in a way.
I think it's in those instances where they kind of go on the defensive a little bit is maybe where I'm feeling the similarity, because like when Michael is, it's not really a conversation with Athena at this point, but she gets immediately defensive and like it's her way or the highway. But the same thing kind of happens when Athena is the one coming at Buck, and he's like, no, this is.
Oh yeah, it's like the meeting of wills, the two of them.
Exactly. So it's like that's why there's like such an interesting clash. Yeah, it's like very strong personalities.
Because like Syl was saying, she isn't impulsive, but when things are personal, okay. Well, before I say that, she in the workplace, she is so good at her job and always in control. Even when things are out of control, she is in control. She is queen,
his mother,
and you never see her like even when people like even when Buck got at her, she was like, I'm not gonna let this punk ass kid tell me that if a baby dies, it's on me. No, I'm gonna roll up on his I'm gonna roll up on him and tell him what's what. But it's like as soon as it's like a personal situation, she does get defensive super easily, because it's like, I really think because she does think out all the things that she does. Like she's a big planner and like wants things to be in their place and where they belong. And
but once they are, they're set in stone, and there's not a lot of there's a lot of rigidity there, so there's not a lot of room for like if something were to like a wrench thrown into it, like Michael. That doesn't
or being told that she's wrong, being told that like you actually knew this, and then it's like the defensive hackles come up, because it's like, no, actually, I am incredibly intelligent, and like I would know if I had known, this is on you, not me. And yeah, I do see that thread.
Yeah, I kind of get the sense that like looking just at this episode, I kind of get the sense that things kind of work out for Athena kind of in a similar way as Buck, but she works towards it more, whereas like for Buck it just kind of like he falls into it,
and she's placing brick by brick,
is building towards it. Yes.
Yeah,
that's great. I can't wait to talk about her more, and as we get more into her character, because she is.
I can't believe we have Angela Bassett.
I know.
On the show.
I know. And she had to be like, I have to go film Black Panther and win all the awards by, and then like came
You know.
back. What?
Super cash.
Yeah, she's incredible. And they made and continue to write a character that is worthy of her. So
Yeah.
good on them. That leaves us with our dynamic duo.
Bestieism.
Besties forever. I guess I'll do Pen first because I don't have as much about her. Because she really is like, just kind of being on business in this episode. She's not,
Yeah.
she's not about the drama that is happening. She's not in it, but she's there to witness it in several different ways.
Oh yeah. Boy does she. And she clocks it. So like one of the things that we learned very quickly is that she knows exactly what is happening at like almost all times. And she's kind of okay, I know she's a paramedic, but she's kind of got her finger on the pulse.
I think she has like a
metaphorically.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think she has like a pattern recognition that allows her to be like, look at Buck a certain way in this episode where I think she was in the background a lot of the time just like looking at him and like, please get your shit together.
She watches others' reactions a lot in this episode.
She's observing a lot.
Yeah, she does a lot of observing, and she's kind of like hangs back a little bit, except with Chimney, who's her BFF. But they have that rapport that they've built there. But for everything else, she just kind of stays out of it.
Yeah, she's there to do her job. She is incredible.
She
She's so
observes it
competent.
all.
She's so smart. I love that, like, right off the bat, we get her, info dumping, about snakes. And she just has all this knowledge about random things.
But it's also, like, really, really relevant information. Like it just seems like she knows a lot about a lot of
She
things.
does.
But, like, not even jack of all trades, shallow, kind of shallow understanding. She
Like
goes deep,
deep dives into things,
like at the apartment complex when she realized that the waste pipe services like a quarter of the floors above, so like even if they turn the water off for the building, like it's still gonna.
She didn't even wait to like get orders from Bobby or discuss it. She just went and was like, yeah, we're gonna make sure nobody is going to flush a toilet and kill this baby.
Yeah. And that shows like how much trust is within that part of the team as well. And like this is probably something that's happened before, that like Hen has realized something.
She acts on it immediately.
Exactly, like she's observed. She takes the time to observe, but when she acts, it is like very quick sort of thing.
Yeah, I can appear, I think, that she is just acting without, that she's being impulsive, kind of like Buck, but it's the complete opposite. Like she is functioning off of facts.
Her like problem assessment is just so much quicker than like anybody else's.
Yeah, and I think it is because she knows so much about so many things, and like I wonder if it's just because she just likes to like learn things, or if she's like, I'm gonna learn everything about anything that could possibly come up in my job. Like it's just so interesting to me.
Maybe a little bit of both.
I mean, and then I think you do see kind of like a love for animals. I mean, the way she was like,
oh my God,
yeah,
shooting out facts about the snake.
But she was so right though, because she was like they were talking about, well, Buck is the one that was like, I'll just like punch it in the face or whatever, and they were talking about killing the snake, and she's like, no, actually, like the snake just deserves to live. Like he's just doing what snakes do. It's not his fault that like this woman is an idiot, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she's like, she's just like part of nature, and like
just
this
what
is
nature intended.
Which is so true of her.
But it's also kind of interesting too, because like you can tell that she cares a lot about her job, and that, I mean, I think anybody in that kind of line of work cares about people. But it's interesting because she can kind of like, what's the opposite of empathizing?
Intellectualizing.
Yeah, kind of, because she's very like, she doesn't pull the punch to say like, this girl's kind of stupid. Like she let the snake in there.
Yeah.
But also like looking for a humane way to deal with the snake, with the wanting to put it to sleep, as opposed to more aggressive solutions. So it's interesting there the way she kind of who who was the patient that she was treating almost, I guess. But I don't think that's like complimentary to her character in this instance. We just don't have enough to like go off of for her yet.
I just kind of have it's a couple notes, but it's basically the same thing, which is just that how she was observing Buck. You see her observing Buck a lot in this episode, and like how he's holding himself and like the repercussions of like how his actions are turning out to have Bobby react. And I think she is recognizing like this is not going to go well.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, she doesn't really say too much. I mean, um you have Chimney saying to Buck to get some common sense.
Yeah, but she's just observing. I think
Yeah.
the first time we really see her interacting is after he's fired, and she's sitting with him in the locker room.
Well, there's also there's also the part where he finally ends up chopping off the head off the snake, and she makes a comment about that's your first choice as to do the that's the
White
the white
macho guy.
macho guy. Yeah.
Okay. I just meant like it was the first time like she's talking to him in a meaningful way, like having an actual conversation with him and not just like a comment,
Yeah, it kind of like belies like how much she kind of maybe reluctantly likes having him
Yes, she
around.
reluctantly cares about him.
In a
She
way.
refers to him basically as a Dalmatian, which is like he's a golden retriever, but she was close. But yeah, she sits down and talks to him in the locker room. I think as we mentioned earlier a little bit, and he asks her like if she can talk to Bobby for him. And we don't see it on screen. I think she did.
I think she did too.
Yeah.
I think she did. And I think she was like, trying to instrument, like, I'm sure there were other people on shift who she could have sent with that fire truck out to that call that Athena was on with the home invasion. But she was like, no, Buck will do this and he will do it well because he knows what's on the line and like I'm gonna help him. This is just my headcanon of what happened.
No, I think you're kind of onto something because I don't remember if this is exactly the moment, but I think when he's pulling the engine back in after the home invasion thing, and there's this shot of like Bobby and Hen right next to him, kind of like standing, just kind of like, arms
She's the
crossed,
only
like
member
waiting for him to come
that's
back.
like there in the shot, and she's watching the entire time.
Yeah, but it kind of like it kind of frames her as kind of like a trusted number 2 position to Bobby a little bit. And so I think that does imply that like, Athena goes to bat for him, but also like Hen goes to bat for him a little bit too. Just in ways that we don't quite see.
Yeah, and I'm saying this with the viewpoint of someone who is rewatching this, and I know more about Hen. She says to Buck, like when back in the locker room, she says like she's legit sorry to see him go, which is saying a lot for her about how much she already cares about him. To say something like that, to take the time out because no one else is like sitting down with him or saying anything. Like I think Chimney was just like, "Sorry, kid," and then she said she gives him validation, but with constructive criticism with validation.
Yeah,
got some skills. You just
something to
lack
help him
the
grow.
discipline. Yep.
Which is again like taking the cue from Bobby, but it also kind of like again it's not a family, but it's a family. Like
yeah,
it is.
But it is.
But it's kind of like a big sister, little brother. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna put up with you, and I'm gonna act like I don't like you, and I don't want anything to do with you.
But she's actually
But when
already
push comes
she's
to
already
shove,
mentally
like,
adopted him.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As the younger sibling. But yeah, so like when Buck gets back and they have she watches this whole exchange with Bobby and him, and he gets his job back, and he turns to her and he's like, I think I'm not fired. And then we immediately see her like go back into her default Hen mode, and she's like, your shift's not over yet.
You still got time.
You've still got time.
Yeah, just like going back into
that mode.
That like that big sister role. Like I can help teach you the ropes if you're willing to learn it. And
I
she's
think
so sassy
she
too.
is, but I also think that like Buck really loves the like those friendly kind of jabs. You know what I mean? He likes
Mhm.
that kind of joking around, which is why he like really fits in with these people and wants to, you know, be a
Yeah.
part of them. But yeah, I mean, we don't get a lot of her in this episode, but what we do get is great.
And what we do get with her is a lot of interaction with Chimney.
Yeah.
Because you can tell like right off the bat the rapport that they have with each other is different than the rapport that Hen has with Bobby,
Mhm.
like we just said, but also different than what Chimney has with Bobby because Chimney's out here, you know, as Bobby's preparing dinner, like pouring his heart out, like trying to, you know, trying to say like I'm not worthy. I gotta keep this girl because she's like so out of my league. So that really like opens up a lot of okay, Chimney is like very he's like
Mm-hmm.
insecure.
He likes to
He doesn't want to be
embellish a lot.
boring, first of all.
Well,
He
yeah.
likes to
He
embellish
even says that. He
and live
literally says that. But
yeah,
he's, oh my God, that whole like basically confessional to his,
exactly.
it's like his internal most like nightmare thoughts, basically, like these
Mm,
wholly anxious musings of how the person that he loves is going to leave him and he's not good enough and she's out of his league, but he can't let her go, blah 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 blah. And he's saying this so humorously, so self-deprecating,
Mm-hmm.
because
mhm.
kind of like Buck, but in a different font, where it's like,
Yeah.
if I just like make it a joke, like everything's fine. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
not, and then it's not deep, and it won't hurt.
Mhm.
But
That's
it's just
exactly
like
it.
the other side of the coin, where it's like Buck is like, go ahead, give them nothing. Jim is like, give them everything, but like make it funny.
Like I'm going to tell you everything that is like awful and probably
Mm-hmm.
heartbreaking, but if I say it in a
Yeah,
funny
It's not a
way,
problem.
like
that's hee hee ha ha.
it's
It's fine.
it's
I'm fine.
yeah, it's entertainment, which is kind of like how we also see that he like envelops himself in because like we see him first of all like making popcorn for a movie
Mm-hmm.
night and he's making like throughout the different calls he's making like all of these movie references, pop culture references, and Buck's just like
Oh
what's
my god.
that because like I wasn't born yet.
I have a listen. I need a 1 minute, 1 minute segue because I have a gripe with that. Okay, listen.
Floor is yours. Yes.
What year is Buck supposed to be born? It's like 92, 93.
91,
Yeah.
92, I
So
think.
he's like 3 years younger than me.
I
He
know.
is a millennial. Not only that, like would he have like seen these movies or at least know like the touchstone, references to the 80s of being a 90s child. He
Come
knows
on.
Bruce Springsteen. You're telling me he doesn't know Rambo?
Exactly. Or Conan the
Exactly.
Barbarian? Like,
But it is.
I'm gonna be that one minority, and I'm just gonna quickly pan away. And I'm 94.
you are the exception to the
You
rule.
are. You are a special little cupcake. But he
Yeah.
but
yeah,
the way
yeah.
he
I mean,
responds to it when they're like, he's like, how do you not know this stuff? And he's like, as far as I'm concerned, when the world started, the day I was born. It's such a Buck
yeah.
thing to say.
I mean, it's kind of like it's like one of the few unbelievable things about the episode that he doesn't know some of these references, but the purpose of them is to illustrate and underline how like truly
Yeah,
young and
I know.
immature he is, blah 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 blah. But anyways, back to Chimney. Like this is how he kind of views the
Mhm.
world is through pop culture references,
Same.
which is very much like us.
He's so us. He's so us coded.
He really is. But it's also kind of interesting because like he kind of like relishes and like puts entertainment up on a pedestal and that's kind of like these epic
Mhm.
storytellings. And that's kind of I think what he's trying to
It feeds
emulate
into how
with like
he,
zhuzhing
yes,
up,
exactly.
yeah, like
Mhm.
zhuzhing up his own life
Mhm.
to impress the
Yeah.
ladies or whatever. And the fact that he's on that like the dating app, the romancing the uniform, it's like he's kind of hiding behind that identity, but
Mm-hmm.
again, he's doing it in like a funny,
But
humorous way.
also
That's like hee hee ha ha, but also it's kind of sad.
just such a weird thing to be like, actually, let me go to a website that like guarantees that I'm gonna be weirdly fetishized. Like,
Yeah, but I don't think he minds.
no, I know he doesn't, but it's, I don't know. It's when he's talking about how his girlfriend's name, who I don't think we have learned at this point. Yeah, I know, but
Tatiana.
I also just choose not to remember it for reasons. But he's like, she's an adrenaline junkie, and like he's like, so I tell her all the stories, you know, as foreplay, like all the work stories as foreplay, and like talking about like running into things and jumping into dangerous things, and Hen's like, when's the last time you did any of that? And he's like, well, I embellish
and
a
we
little.
see- Yeah, and we see like at the call with the snake girl, and he's like, I'm gonna take credit for all of this, just so you know. And it's like they don't really care one way or another. But he's like, yeah, I'm gonna take credit for this. This was all me, and it's gonna be a great story. But it's also kind of interesting too because he uses that to connect with romantic partners.
Yeah.
So it's this like kind of thin parallel to Buck as well, who's kind of trying to find that connection in similar ways, but going about it very differently. Yeah.
I mean, he's not stealing the fire engine to have a a tryst, you know.
No, but
He's doing it on his
he
own
could
time.
totally be stealing those stories to like say that he had done them in the past. Like you know.
Mhm. Yeah. Like he may not be on the clock like Buck is, but he's essentially using his uniform to do the same thing. So it's kind of like on the clock, off the clock. It's essentially very similar,
But it's not
like
interfering
slightly
with
more.
work.
It's
and
adjacent.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's not disrespecting anyone but himself.
Exactly.
But do we want to? I know we've already touched on it like a good bit, so I don't know how much is left. But do we want to dissect the kitchen scene?
Yeah, we can go into a little more detail with that.
We start on like banter between Chim and Hen, and it's showing like their comfort level with each other, and like how that juxtaposes with the nameless other members there, and there's like 2 or 3 other people who are just there and they say nothing. I don't know if we ever see again.
118 is so clicky,
They are.
man.
They really are.
They're the only firefighters. They're like the other ones are just ghosts.
Yeah.
They're just.
It's just like how Athena is the only cop
ever.
But yeah, anyway, they're having a good time and they're bantering, and then Buck is bringing the truck in, and the vibes immediately shift. A disturbance in the force was felt.
Because everyone knows.
He's gonna. Because like they can feel. I'm sure they could feel the vibes coming off
energy.
Dad. Yeah. They were like,
Dad's angry. Ooh, yeah. It's that kind of like, ooh,
yes,
someone's in trouble. Where it's like you don't want to be seen as watching it, but everyone's all kind of like
side eye,
you know, like you know, we kind of want to see what's happening.
But I think when we've already talked about a lot of how Buck operated in this scene, but I think that they showed him like coming in to a situation where everyone was comfortable and everything kind of shifting, and him trying to act like he was comfortable and like on the level that they were by like picking food off of their plates and like joking around with them and projecting. Yeah, like it was very much like an act, like a performance. So I think that was a interesting juxtaposition to show.
Yeah. And you know, it's kind of like he's kind of like an odd one out a little bit. Not too much, but just a little bit. I mean, he does have some sort of like relationship with Bobby, and his bestie paramedic, double trouble over there, Hen and Chimney.
Thing 1 and thing 2.
But
twin,
yeah, thing 1 and thing 2. But where's where's Buck's partner?
Oh, I don't know.
You know?
Yeah.
If only he had someone who could have his back.
Because it's not gonna be Bobby, because, like, Bobby's
Yeah.
captain. Bobby is
Mhm.
calling the shots,
Yeah.
Where's that equal person to him?
Mm.
Because Hen and
Yeah.
Chimney have each other. I'm just saying. And I'll see myself out.
Hmm. Very interesting. I wonder if we'll ever get someone like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. If
Mhm.
only.
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe in season 2. Uh, but but also kind of so to bring this back to the shot of the dinner table at Athena's home. It this is kind of
Mhm.
similar to it too because you have all of the 118 already sitting down or
Mhm.
like before Bobby like
Mhm.
walks over to him, but you have Buck like you said kind of singled out on his own. Like he's not even at the table yet. He doesn't technically metaphorically have a seat at
He
the
never sits
table.
at the table. He gets dressed down before he
Exa-
can sit down, and he
exactly.
gets his
So
plate taken
he's
from
kind
him
of like
after Bobby dresses him
I
down.
know.
Poor baby.
Well, it wasn't his plate. He was just handed the vegetables. And he wasn't sharing. So yeah, he's not even like at the table, but he's like Athena at like visually at the head of the table, but like
Mhm.
apart from everyone else. So that really shows like he's not part of that family, not family, but we know it
Yeah.
is yet. So just like an interesting visual parallel there as
Yeah.
well.
And I think this is one of the only times where we see Hen observing where she actively, I think, is exuding an emotion. And it's while I can't remember if it's like while Buck is getting dressed down or like while he's like picking food off the plates, but she just looks disappointed, which I think is telling to all the things that we were saying about how she like reluctantly cares about him already.
Yeah.
Like he's the station dog.
Disappointed but not
Yeah.
surprised.
Disappointed but not surprised. Yeah.
Like she knew it was a matter of time and
Yeah.
but she had, I think, like Bobby, kind of hoped, he'd
Yeah.
get it into his head
Exactly.
a little earlier and just kind of like, but they're kind of all willing to give him, even though he's out of chances, like an extra chance because he's somehow like wormed his way into their hearts
A
a
little
little
bit
bit
already.
and
Yeah.
like endeared himself to them in a way that like they like having him around, even if he's a pain in the
Hmm.
butt.
Yeah. So I in my second watch through, I apparently decided to put on my film class hat. So
Love
I
it.
have a couple like standout direction editing choices I wanted to talk about. The first one is like one of the first things we see of the 118, which I mentioned briefly at the beginning, which is our first extreme close up on Bobby is literally like from below. And the sun is
Mm.
haloing him, making him look like really angelic and like it's so on purpose to make him look like the hero sweeping into the rescue,
Oh, I
you
love that.
know, and then everything we said earlier about how he is just in charge and competent and reassuring her and the victim survives and it's like, setting up like the hero of the story is like how I saw that.
But also, like, to put, like, the angelic kind of
Mm-hmm.
visuals with the as far as we know, only person of
Of faith, yeah.
faith or who is, like,
Mhm.
deeply
Yeah.
connected
Is
in that
fitting.
way, that's kinda
Yeah.
perfect.
And then with the jumper, he's very calm and empathetic and he's extending his arm to help and he's saying like please, please. It's a completely different demeanor than you see on the
Mhm.
first call. And then he says please, please, and then she jumps and says no one can help me. And then they do an extreme wide shot, which is the exact opposite of the extreme close up of him like looking down where she was standing before and looking like
Mhm.
defeated. So I thought that was a nice
Yeah.
juxtaposition.
But then you also kind of have that, like, dichotomy, I guess, of, like, angelic
Yeah.
halo, heaven,
Jumping,
jumping to the
falling.
ground.
Yeah.
I don't wanna say, like,
Hell. Yeah,
hell,
no, but
but
yeah.
Fallen Angel.
Fallen
fallen angel
angel.
is good.
Ooh.
That's nice. Thanks, Supernatural.
Thanks, Sil, for big braining that. That's actually perfect.
Yeah,
Hmm.
like you said, fallen angel, heaven, hell. I also wonder though because he's Catholic and like, you know, um but he's also been like an alcoholic and an addict. Like how he feels like um, with his religious view on um, kind of taking one's own life sort of thing. I don't want to get too deep dark into it, but like just something interesting, like how he copes with those kind of calls, like from a personal standpoint, but also from like maybe a religious standpoint.
Yeah, I think it could be very telling of like showing how people on calls and like even the rest of the people at the 118 see him like kind
Mm-hmm.
of as this just like embodiment of good. And
Yeah.
then how he views himself as like the complete opposite because of everything he's been through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which speaking of, there's an extreme close up on Bobby's notebook, which I know the notebook was mentioned earlier, but they don't do a lot of extreme close ups. So like when they do one,
Mm-mm.
I clock it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so like we look at the notebook and we see that it's a numbered list with names and what their emergency was. And then we can draw the conclusion because number 38 is there. It's filled out with Curtis S. and the kid from the pool that we saw in the first call. That it's
Who we didn't get the name of
no,
earlier
we
either.
didn't. So you only learn it, in this notebook, in this extreme close up of like a 1 second shot, for crazy people like us. But then you can draw the conclusion that like this is a list of people that he has saved or been part of saving. And then he has number 39 listed, but it is blank, and he is shown staring
Mhm.
down at that before he goes into confession.
Yes, because that next line should have
Yes.
been the woman
The
who
jumper.
jumped.
And he's blaming himself for it for
Mm-hmm.
reasons we haven't fully learned yet, but it's the seeds are being planted.
Oh,
yeah. It's really beautiful
like
work.
it's a little heavy-handed, and it's like, here you go, we're gonna
Yeah.
give this to you on a silver platter sort of thing, but it's also like it's also kind of understated.
It is,
Which is a hard line to walk
which
in
is
that
one
sort
of
of
the
thing.
things that is so cool about the show because they do this stuff so well.
Mhm. Like some of these parts are like really obvious, but they're trying to draw you to a conclusion that may not have been as obvious otherwise.
Or they're
So it's to like help the viewer
or they're
along.
or they're giving you information that when you finally get to the point, you're like, oh, and then you recall back.
Mhm.
And then the brain blast happens.
Yeah, it's like a really great way to sprinkle um like foreshadowing and
Yeah.
relevant just like little plot
Yeah.
seeds.
So my last one, I think, is my favorite one that they did. So the transition that we get from Chimney in his home to Chimney at the station is a J cut.
What is a J cut?
So in film editing, a J cut is where the audio from the next scene is overlapped onto the previous scene. So there's an L cut too, which is like the opposite. But anyway, so he's shown on the couch with his girlfriend, and you don't hear them talking. You only hear the ambient sound from the movie, and there's no dialogue. Then his dialogue does start from the next scene where he's talking about what he was thinking. So it creates this effect that allows us to see into Chimney's internal monologue without literally making it just an internal monologue. It was just
That's so interesting.
smart to me, because you
Mhm.
see this comparison of who Chimney is with his girlfriend and who Chimney is with the people that he is comfortable being himself around. Because when he's comfortable with people, he cannot keep his inside thoughts. He can't keep any thoughts inside. There are none.
Right.
Wait, actually, like that does come kind of into play because he's kind of known as like not the best secret keeper. So he just kind of like has a stream of consciousness at all
Yeah.
times, sort of thing.
So is it safe to say that he doesn't have a filter?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Almost.
No.
No filter. There's no grate on that fireplace for Chimney. That was a bad joke.
I think it was great. Bad Reputation by Bass Drum of Death is like Buck's intro, like the Buck the person, not Buck
And the fire engine.
paramedic. Yeah. So it's playing while he's driving fire truck. There are not a lot of lyrics to this song, but like, it's called Bad Reputation.
Just vibes.
But I put the one lyric in here that I was like, okay, obviously. It says bad reputation, I'm cycling, can't make amends. Why can't you all get down? Like, why can't you all get, on my page?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just thought that was hilarious. And then this was a very heavy-handed one, but I really liked it because I think it was great at setting up the show and also wrapping up this episode. Under Pressure,
Mm-hmm.
Queen and David Bowie. I don't know how much money they had to pay for that.
It's okay. They're one of the
Yeah, I
major
know.
networks. They had the budget for it, but like
So
excellent choice.
yeah, there's a lot here, but I just picked like the two biggest ones, and like sorry, they're about Buck. I'm Buck coded. What can I do? So it's the terror of knowing what this world is about. Feels like a callback to Buck saying he knows what he lost with his job, and then can't we give ourselves one more chance? Just Buck asking, for one more chance, and Bobby giving it to him. And then, there's the whole literally under pressure of it all and relating to the world around you and realizing that, you need to care about people is the song. I was like, that's a great theme for the episode. Like ties it up in a nice little bow.
Oh yeah, we'll discuss it in the terms of the theming. But like because this is the episode about the pilot, I think going forward we'll often pick up on a lot of the needle drops, the song choices that are put in the episodes, because whoever does the music, and we should probably look that up. It's so like pertinent to the episodes or to the characters. Like the lyrics are always something like super relevant, but it's also a lot of times some very well known tunes that I think viewers will already have a personal relationship with, which when put in, and the timing of when they put in these songs is also very pivotal and so smart to give it like the most like emotional gravitas or the most emotional punch. So by choosing oftentimes songs that a lot of people are very familiar with, and again they're able to do so because they're on like a major network. At this point it was still Fox, but Fox, ABC, they have the big network budgets. So these are songs that people already know, they have relationships with, and that just helps layer the amount of emotional response that the show is going to garner from the viewer by using these kind of songs as well. So just something we're going to like pay attention to, and something I guess to look forward to.
I will be constantly paying attention to, because I'm a very musically and lyrically inclined person. But yeah, so what Rachel said about all of the big brain connecting the dots with the characters and the themes, but also sometimes they're just doing it for the laughs, for the unhingedness. I don't want to spoil anything, but like sometimes I literally will hear a song come on and it's like you said, where it's like the recognition of the song and it's like the lyrics haven't even started, but I know what it's gonna be. And I'm like,
that like
they're crazy. Still can attest to this.
Yeah. No, I've actually had like at least a couple of song choices that I've questioned.
Yes, and
but maybe it's my and maybe it's really just my own personal reaction. Like
there was like one instance where I was like, okay, the vibes of how it sounds, good. The actual lyrics, weird.
Yeah.
Which is like
that is a general outlier though.
But that's like kind of normal for other shows. So I think it's because they're so good at it when there is an outlier. I'm like, weird choice. Anyway, yeah, music is a really integral part of film and television because it helps set the tone and the mood and enhance things. So we will be talking about it.
And speaking about setting the tone and the mood, also just like I wanted to talk briefly about how the pilot sets up the framework for the rest of the show, like in terms of format, like the actual mechanics of how the show works. Like we open up with the waveforms of the call to 911. And then um actually I don't think in this episode does it open up with 911 what's your emergency, or does it just open up with Abby's voiceover?
Opens up with Abby's voiceover, which I think
Essentially,
is the only outlier.
yeah. But essentially you do get like a
Yeah.
voiceover with that waveform and that kind of that sound
Mhm.
effect. So it it kind of becomes, I don't know, I feel a little bit conditioned when I hear that sound now. It's kind of funny. Like I know what to expect next,
Yep.
you know? So, and not every episode does this, but this is how we get to a lot of the calls, just like like
Mhm.
cold open, or hard cut, and then going into the next call is that kind of format. I I want to kind of call it, the show is kind of like a procedural with a heart of gold. Um, because it is kind of like the you get the case of the
Mhm.
week
Yeah.
sort of thing,
Mhm.
or the calls
Yeah.
essentially. 911 is interesting though, because as opposed to some other procedurals where you have like they focus on one case,
Mhm.
sort of, if it's like a law procedural or a medical procedural or anything like that, they kind of tend to focus on one case.
Mhm.
But with 911 it kind of sticks out because we get a bunch of different cases or calls, so there's a lot of opportunity to see characters in different kind of situations, different environments, and also how the cases or the calls lend themselves to the greater arc of the episode or the greater
Mhm.
themes of the episode,
Mhm.
which I think the show also does very, very well. Sometimes it's a little like, it's a little more obvious. Sometimes you kind of have to dig a little bit, or a call may pertain specifically to one character's plot line, in like the main plot line, but then you have like one or two kind of side plots. So sometimes it will relate to one of those other plot lines specific to one character, or just like the theme as a whole, which is something that I really like to pay attention to. And sometimes I get a little too red stringy, like, this is how all of this is connected.
I feel like I'm gonna be with you on this one though.
The more, the merrier.
I
I love
mean,
that.
it do be connected. Like they do it on purpose to the point that like even the
Yeah.
characters are aware that like they should be paying attention to their cases, that it
Mhm.
impacts what's going on with their life. I think Chimney especially.
Oh yeah. Like he projects
Yeah,
onto
yeah,
these cases
yeah.
a lot of times.
It just somehow always perfectly ties in and is relevant, to at least one of them. But normally
Yeah.
multiple members of the 118 in different ways.
And there's always layers in there to peel
Yeah.
back, because again, sometimes it is on the more obvious side. And it's like, well, why are you telling me this if I kind of already
Yeah.
know it? But
Mhm.
there's usually something there's a little bit more depth underneath, or at least like
Mhm.
sometimes I can find it. I don't know. And then I just wanted to talk about kind of the mechanics of a pilot episode, which, first episode, and how it introduces characters, because you're fresh, brand new, like there's nothing kind of precursor to this episode, unless it's a spin-off, but in this case, it's not. And how each character is introduced in a very specific way, which again we've talked about a lot in our conversation here. But it's also kind of interesting because they're also kind of as a necessity, as a lesser evil, there has to be a lot of
Mhm.
exposition, right? So there's a lot of verbal, like, telling, at which, one of the big rules of filmmaking is show
Mhm.
not tell.
Mhm.
But you kind of find with a lot of pilots, like just as a general, there's so much information to include
To
to help
establish.
the
Yeah.
audience to establish the settings, and to also like let the audience or prospective audience get an idea of who these characters are very quickly, that it has to work a little bit differently than some other episodes when you get a little bit more, I guess, like leniency in how you use your time.
Yeah.
Because this episode, And as you can tell with us like talking for so long, this episode packed a
So much. There
punch.
was so
So
much.
many
Oh my god.
elements because you have to establish the whole world of first responders, which a lot of people may not be privy to. So you have to do that. You have to set up the dispatch. You have to set up the fire station and how those each kind of work, as well as the characters and their
Yeah.
own inner worlds. Because if you can't grab anyone's attention with any of that, how are you going to expect them to tune in
Again.
for any
Yeah,
more episodes or for the network to pick it
Mhm.
up and sign in and all that stuff? So I just think that's kind of interesting of, again, that like shorthand of how each character is introduced and what it tells about each of them in a very like condensed, like it has to be condensed in a
It's actually
condensed
really
way.
impressive how many main characters there are on this ensemble show who like
Yeah.
obviously they don't all get equal coverage in every episode, but like they all are equally covered throughout the season. Like they
Mhm.
all are very fully
It's very
fleshed out,
balanced.
like, with full lives
Yes.
outside of the station, but they're also interconnected because of their friendships and relationships with each other. And it's just done so well. Like I can't think of another show that has this many people that like is so well put together and holds the attention to the point that I'm like, I'm gonna rewatch it like over and over and over again.
Yeah, like even the rewatchability of the pilot is still pretty high. And I think that like all of this and what you just said speaks to how well the writers have fleshed things out beforehand so that they are able to portray this world that we're just stepping into in a very easy to dive into way. And it kind of makes sense then that the writers of this first episode are the creators, and I think like their credits are numerous. And a lot of us know Ryan Murphy from a bunch of different shows. Like he's very, what's the word for like doing a lot of stuff?
Prolific. Yeah.
Thank you. He's very prolific. So I feel like that also has helped hone like what they needed to get done for this pilot episode to help it be a successful pilot.
Absolutely.
That's it.
I'm gonna put my
Don't say that.
agree stamp on there.
Yep, same.
And I think Syl should tell us about her theme that she sussed out for this episode.
Yes. I want to know.
Okay. So I don't even know where to start because there's so many layers, and by the time I actually got to the theme, I was like, there's a lot, But I guess I can start with like the way Abby ends this episode or the dialogue that she has, which is, it takes a certain kind of person to swim in the pain of the world and not get wet, to run towards danger rather than run away from it. And for those of us that choose this life, there's no place we'd rather be. So essentially, like there's a lot of themes within the theme, but choosing is, I would say, the overarching one. But at first I thought the way some of these calls were set up, there was a blocking of airways. Now, like, let me lead you into this. The first call, it's the boy that's drowning, right? Blocking of an airway because of water. The second call doesn't completely, there's not, well, I unless you guys see it differently, I don't see a blockage of an airway, but I do see it as a blockage of life, which is, if you guys really tie that in together, you'll see what I mean. Anyway, third call.
I'm with you so far.
Okay, third call, we have the baby in the pipe. It's not breathing because there's something blocking its airway. In the fourth call, we have a woman being constricted by the neck, blockage of airway. Now, the fifth call does not go into that. So that one, unless someone can help me there, I don't got it. But so at least with those four initial calls, like so I went from a blockage of the airways to a blockage of life. And then because essentially, if the kid wasn't going to be resuscitated, the kid from the initial call was going to die. Same with the baby. If there was no compressions, if Bobby and if the 118 didn't help out there, going to die. And then the woman being the snake lady. If someone didn't cut the snake's head off, she was going to die. Anyway, and then I thought about it, and it connects to choices. So I know, again, just stay with me because I feel like I'm rambling, but stay with me.
No, you're great. This is interesting.
I feel like the episode, at the end of it, tying back to what Abby says, is choosing who lives or dies, or choosing life. Sorry, choosing a life. There we go. Choosing a life. Because, okay. God, this is so
No, you're
much.
good.
This makes total sense.
I just started
This is
laughing
great.
because you triggered the Hamilton lyrics in me. So,
Oh,
which
one?
Story.
Brian Murphy, Brad Fulchik,
Yeah.
and Tim Minear. That's who would be telling your story.
Let me get into the third call a little bit. The third call is the baby. So surface level, baby's going to die if there wasn't any compressions done and the 118 getting in there, blah 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 blah. Now, what's interesting is there's a question of who gets to live in here and in the call with the snake lady. So Buck is in the ambulance, right? And then Athena comes in with the teenage mom that's bleeding out basically. And he's like, this is going back to blocking or the blockage of life. So I wrote here that it's almost like Buck is choosing who's going to live, who's going to die. And it goes into, them being firefighters. They have to save the victims, but he's choosing which one to save. He wants to choose the baby instead because the teenage girl did something pretty unthinkable, just flushing the newborn baby down the toilet. And I know we went into it a little bit, but Athena does say, hey, you do not get to choose who lives or dies. But then Buck is saying, I was under the impression that it was kind of my job. And then she goes along to say, the mother was no less of a child than her baby. You're going to get someone killed. So I feel like Buck, in a way, could be read as potentially, is it even, do I even refer this as playing God?
Yeah, you could.
At least his job is,
he,
right?
in that situation is saying who he thinks is worthy of having a better chance of being saved.
Yeah.
Because he just immediately was like, there's a line for him where he's like, if you cross this line, I'm sure there are many different things, but if you cross a line for him, he's like, you don't deserve to live. Like, he's not out here killing people, but he's he's not going to be sympathetic towards you.
Who is he to decide who is worthy and who's not, instead of like,
and then that quickly ties into the fourth call with the snake lady, which is, Hen and Buck are kind of opposed in here. Like, they're, kind of not butting heads, but, there is a conversation about, like, the snake, right? Well, actually, most of the 118 is actually kind of against Hen in this situation, because Hen is like, dude, this is a snake. Yeah. It's doing what it's meant to do.
Don't punish the snake for being a snake.
Yeah. And then there's Buck with what is that? An axe?
Yeah.
Well, he takes matter into his own hands and chops the snake's head off. So he chooses the lady, which is essentially what you are supposed to do. But there was a question of,
was that his call to make?
Was that his call to make? And if there was a different decision that they could have made
to have a different outcome. Yeah.
But there were choices that were made. Back to choices. And Buck chose to, and quickly, and it was not a bad choice because that's what he was supposed to do at the end of the day. But I digress. And then Rachel, something that I didn't think about was something that we talked about, which was choosing the family. So you kind of added that layer onto this. But in general, I kind of hope that like made sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I didn't think about the choices thing. That's really smart.
Because like they all kind of have their own agency, except for the victims.
I went with something very obvious.
Obvious is good.
Pressure.
Yeah,
that was one of mine.
Pressure, and I also put drowning in parentheses because like drowning is like you're essentially you're surrounded by pressure, the water pressure. And so I'm just going to hit by hit very quickly go through here. Abby is drowning under the pressure of caring for a sick mother and juggling her job. Bobby is drowning in the pressure to stay on the straight and narrow parentheses sober path. Buck is drowning under the pressure to be good enough. Chimney is drowning under the pressure to keep the woman he loves. Hen was the biggest stretch I had here. Hen is drowning under the pressure to keep the baby from drowning, and arguably to help Buck, because I really do think that she was working hard to like try and keep her little pet, her little Dalmatian,
her little family afloat, maybe.
And then Athena is drowning under the pressure of her family dynamic and marriage changing.
Yeah.
And then we have way more obvious things like the drowning person drowning, the jumper drowning from the pressure of life. The baby could have drowned, but was also had the pressure from the pipes, like literal pressure. Same with the boa constrictor lady, literal pressure around her throat.
That ties into Scylla's obstruction of airways sort of thing.
Well, like the drowning, like metaphorically for all of these, for the most part, except for the drowning. It is a metaphorical like restriction of like of that breath, of like that ease of life. You know what I mean? And the last one, I guess, was like another semi-stretch where I said the home invasion is like the pressure of overcoming the fear that was like threatening to paralyze this poor 9-year-old girl who was home alone. And the mom left the phone without her house. Left the house without her phone. Like how do you do that?
Yeah. I remember talking about that yesterday.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was mine.
At least they had like an explainer for that one. So
yeah, it was funny because I had drowning like until the end of the episode, and then I was like, oh yeah, under pressure. That was like a bonk over the head with the theme. So
yeah, that one was like pretty much a gimme because I had two also. One of them was the under pressure, and basically, just emphasizing everything that you said just now, Han, but it also like just kind of like as a zoom out sort of thing, like there was so much emphasis on how calm, cool, and collected first responders need to be in high stakes situations. And this is first responders from, Abby as the operator to the firefighters to the Athena with the police and everything like that, how they always have to have it all under control. But like under the surface, all of their personal lives were not good.
Right.
Or non-existent.
Yeah, like so much messier. And that is kind of like underlined with what Abby says, that she is more comfortable dealing with those other kind of emergencies rather than the emergency, like the ones at home and the ones closer to them. So there's also like an element of being removed or more distant because it's not happening to you, which is also something I think that gets mentioned pretty early on in the season as well. So, and we also see like in terms of Under Pressure, which is a fantastic song for this, just the how it sounds, the song how it sounds, the tempo and everything that is kind of like it amps up the tension in the
build,
song.
The build. Yeah.
Thank you. Not even the build. Like it starts right away with like the beat, and it's kind of I don't know what the time signature is for that. Because I don't speak music. But it's like right off the bat, it kind of like puts you on a bit of a like an uneven level sort of thing, like uneven ground. So that's kind of mirrored in like the chaos of a daily shift. Because it's a constant adrenaline rush. We see how hectic and chaotic at a moment's notice each day-to-day is, and everything's different. Like every day is different, but then also like the emotional whiplash that these first responders have to experience. Like, you're on such a high after helping save someone's life, and this comes again from all sides, and we see it very much with Buck too. For like the highs are really, really high, but then the lows are really, really low. And we see that also after the jumper with Bobby. There's a shot where he just kind of like, it's a wider shot, and he just kind of like takes a moment and kind of like doesn't really crumple, but just kind of like takes a breath sort of thing. And especially I think we see this with best illustrated with Abby, like she's on that call for the jumper, and then she finds out what happens, and they hang up, and then immediately there's another call.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Yeah.
just emotional turmoil, and you kind of have to be a little further removed so you don't bow under the pressure.
Yeah, which is why it's important that you can walk
Exactly.
away. Yeah. Which is, I think, what Bobby was trying to teach
Exactly.
Buck.
And then, so that was also what I had for Under Pressure in a slightly different light. But then my other one, another theme that I kind of found a thread through the episode was coping mechanisms. So, like dealing with the job versus dealing with your life sort of thing. Because Bobby even says, like, when he's at the church, he says, the only way to survive the job is to find a way to cope with the ones you lose. And that's when he talks about the speech, like, some people do this, some people blah, 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 blah. Oh, I did it.
It's okay, I did it.
So, so whatever problems in life these first responders will have, like, in their personal lives, they have to leave it behind because it slows them down. He brings this point up when he and Buck are talking on the rooftop, and he's like, how heavy is your kit? Buck's like, it's like 60 pounds, and I'm paraphrasing here because I didn't write it down, but Bobby says essentially like, that's all that you can carry. Anything else has to be put away because it will slow you down, and it will make not as good of a
I think it was like alluding to like you'll
You'll get
hurt,
someone
killed.
killed, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, it'll harm people essentially if you're not able to, put the pressures of your personal life in your, not even your back pocket, but like all the way in your locker. So I kind of wrote down a few things of how the characters coped. I don't have a lot to talk about just because we've kind of touched on everything throughout our conversation, but Buck was pretty obviously it was the sex addiction, but also maybe more so connection. So that's how he coped, like searching for that connection, that affirmation. Um, Bobby's was he copes through, well, he used to cope through non-productive means like his alcoholism and addictions, but he's turned a corner and he relies much more on his faith, and especially his confessions, going weekly, because that's one way for him to like upkeep it. So it's a good habit for him, or like a coping habit. Athena's is denial, denial. Chimney's is humor and deflection. Like if I say it in a funny way, no one's gonna think it's sad. I didn't really have one for Hen, again, because we didn't really get as much of a clue into her character as we would have liked, I think. And then Abby was a little, okay, I don't know if this was a little grasping at straws, but because she has her own emergencies at home, she doesn't really have like an opportunity or an outlet for a coping mechanism. But we do see two instances where she does not have a lot of time for people who are not like conscientious of others. So the I forget her name, the caregiver who's supposed to be watching her mom during the day, but we see is just kind of like, she's late, she doesn't call, she sits right down and starts texting and is not paying any attention to Abby's mom. And Abby's like, yeah, that's a real go-getter attitude, but the girl doesn't care because she, kind of like Buck, she knows there's no consequences, or believes there's no consequences to her job, so she just keeps coasting along. But then also, so that's one for Abby, dealing with that at home, but then also at work when the non-emergency calls, like the lady who was
Or
calling
chicken
about
nuggets.
the chicken nuggets.
Girl.
and how she just like she read her kind of like the riot act was so
Mm-hmm.
firm and like shut it down because it's not being conscientious for people who need to utilize
those resources that she's
the
tapping up.
emergency
Yeah.
lines. So I don't know exactly what to call that, but like for Abby, someone who's so like empathetic and wants to care for.
It's called I feel like it's the opposite of taking your anger out on the wrong people. It's like saving it for the people
taking them out on the right
deserve it.
people.
Yeah.
I like that. The people who deserve it. So yeah, that's kind of how all of the characters like
Nice.
are dealing with their personal struggles, but also how they deal with their personal struggles when they don't have an opportunity to put it
Yeah.
away because they're not
Right.
working.
So interesting. We're so smart.
We're so smart. We have great ideas. I love how we all saw such different
Yeah.
thematic threads through the episodes, and that's surprise.
Yeah. Is it time for me to do the thing?
The slow burn.
Okay. So hear me out. I know it's the first episode, but we know that canonically Buck is bisexual as of season 7, episode 4. And Tim Minear said that, quote, that this part of him has been coded into the show at least since season 2.
Mm-hmm.
The keyword being at least. He goes on in that same interview to say, so I feel like, and sometimes it's funny, you'll be writing something and you won't even realize that you've been setting up something that ends up happening. It just grows organically in some ways. So anyway, which brings me to queer coding, which can be intentional or unintentional, and whether it was done on purpose or not. Buck is exhibiting some negative stereotypical traits bisexual men have been coded with, promiscuity being a big one, and toxic masculinity in the sense that, not in the sense that he's like gross, but it's very much that like bravado machismo, like he's putting on that the face of what he thinks a man is supposed to be like, and that is very queer coded,
right?
Because whether characters
especially
know consciously or subconsciously, like they're trying to compensate for something or to hide something, and like we discussed,
I was just gonna say like match a societal expectation.
Exactly.
When you pull the layer off, that's not necessarily who they are. Sorry if I was.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say, like we talked about a lot of the things that fall into these categories, the toxic masculinity and the promiscuity and what could possibly be behind it. And one of the things that we kept alluding to, or I think outright saying once or twice, is that all of it feels very performative. And that, my friends, is some bisexual queer coding.
If I ever saw some.
Listen, I got there. It took me a minute. Because the first thing I thought was, well, look at him.
You did support it.
Yeah.
Though, so.
Listen, Tim Minear is here for us. He is one of us.
Yeah, and like seeing as that is part of canon, like we do want to honor that, even though like it feels weird saying that's a spoiler.
I don't think someone's sexuality is a spoiler, and I feel like even if he hadn't canonically, come out on the show, I still would be wanting to talk about this.
Exactly. So we're honoring that knowledge from the more current episodes to help just inform our readings and our interpretations in ways that like.
No, I think that's a good word because it's because there's, I mean, as someone who, I mean, I think everyone here is, queer, come out late in life situation. It can be very much a, well, where did this come from? Like kind of place from some people. And I know that has been the reaction in certain sects of people who watch this show. So I think it's an
important part of the character.
It is a very important part of the character. And even though Buck didn't realize it fully out loud until season 7, he still was always bisexual. And you have the creator here saying, I was even doing it consciously since season 2, but probably even earlier, subconsciously, because it grew organically, and you don't realize you're setting it up until you go, oh, okay, that's what I've been writing the whole time.
Yeah. And there's also that kind of relationship. Sometimes it's a converse relationship, but between, like a creator's intention versus interpretation. So even, for people who were watching live or who are watching for the first time, up until season 7 and may not know, there is a lot to interpret there, but knowing what we know now and having that confirmation, and the showrunner saying retroactively that there was intention there, I think just like really solidifies the importance that like this is how we need to go about like looking at this character in particular, but also that like widens the lens to how else can we interpret other characters too that may display some interesting characteristics that aren't necessarily like in the like just below the surface in the subtext, like not necessarily canonized.
Absolutely.
If that made any semblance of a sense.
That was the most thinly veiled reference. But it was great. You worded it great. We're not doing this because we think there's a lack of representation on the show. Like, one of the best things about the show is that it's had representation since the beginning. You have a gay man who came out late in life, married
in the first
episode, and then you have a lesbian couple. Anyway, it was just important to us to include a segment that's dedicated to this, because it's not only important to us, but it's important to a lot of queer people to have this, including myself when I say that, to have that representation, but then also like talk about it and go back and explore like how that has developed and said in a much deeper way than just going, yeah, no, he has been the whole time. You know what I mean? I was going to say thank you for the people who are listening to our extremely long first episode. We needed to lay some groundwork. We needed to discuss, the birth, the origins of these characters in the show.
Yeah, and it was a lot. It was a lot to go through because, again, pilot episode, it packs so much in such a short amount of time.
That's why we're doing a podcast on it, because there's a lot here. So,
and boy, can we talk about it.
Yeah, there's just I probably said this a lot, like maybe earlier, don't remember, but there's so much to talk about. There's so much to analyze and just get into, and like these conversations are just so, the conversations that we have, and hopefully with our audience, I hope that it's meaningful, because some of these conversations are super meaningful to me. The show is meaningful to me. It's done a good job at, aside from making me think,
think and feel.
Makes you feel and cry. Yes, it makes you feel so many things.
Oh, it makes me cry.
And scream.
Oh, and scream. Jesus. Yeah. Someone might call 911. Dying. Oh,
that would be the best thing ever.
The irony.
Well,
yeah, and we hope that you will also talk to us and let us know your thoughts on these characters and their relationships and the deep dives, anything. We love talking about this, obviously. It's why we decided to just like press record on the conversations we were already having.
Yeah, we love talking about it amongst ourselves, but like we will talk about it to, I think, anyone who will listen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it would be better if it were a conversation, like a back and forth. Not that we can't, go on a total monologue. We will if given the opportunity. But it's more fun for us if it's a full conversation.
The great thing about this podcast is that we're not forcing you to listen to it. So if you're here and you're listening, you want to be here, and we really appreciate you. And thank you for joining us for our first of very many long conversations about 911.
Remember, don't take a fire engine out for a joyride.
But if you do,
take a buddy with you. Thank you for listening to the Buddie System podcast from start to finish.
We literally cannot shut up about 911, so please come talk to us on your favorite social media platform.
We're at Buddie System Pod everywhere. That's BUDDIE System Pod.
Leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to get a personal shout out in the next episode. The Buddie System is a Nerdvergent media production featuring music from Divinity.
Can't get enough of the buddies? Subscribe to our Patreon for access to exclusive content and our Discord community.
Catch you next time, and don't forget,
bring a buddy with you.